value of the uniqueness that I experienced in the American education system. Um, in my speech, I know that many of you are here to learn about applying to the US, right? And if you're a student, you're probably interested. You're doing a pre-U. If you're a parent here, I see a few parents in the crowd. Your child is probably interested in the US education, or perhaps you are interested in sending your child to the US as well. I could go on and on about how a US education is great and definitely goes there. But I can't do so without obviously addressing the elephant in the room, which is that we are living in a very turbulent time for international students in the US. And that is to say, with the policies of Trump, the policies of international student visas, and everything that's going on, right? There is a lot of turmoil, and we can't address this. One of my nephews literally just left to a university in the US after transferring out from some university after doing his CDP. And there was a lot of anxiety, I think, in the family. Both felt across, all the cousins and uncles and aunties, but also I'm sure to his parents who are sending away their child to for the first time to, overseas, but more to a place where that seems incredibly unstable now. So there is a lot of second guessing, and I'm sure that many of you are experiencing this feeling. And for ask any of the students here, right? I think every day, every time, this whole year, every announcement that comes out, I think there's a lot of anxiety that fills out every single current student. Like, can I stay in the US? Will I get my one visa? Maintain? Will I get cancelled? Obviously, all the indications of facts point us that we are okay for now, and that is the reality. But I still want to sugarcoat it, right? That in the reality that there is a lot of instability, and I won't paint a perfectly rosy picture of the current situation. And things are indeed scary. So I think for today, I kind of want to share three perspectives. I don't have any slides, but I hope you can follow me on this. And I think this can come from me. I was a freshman in 2016, so that was my first year. In 2016, it was during the first Republican term of Donald Trump. And it was obviously as well a very unstable time. I remember we were all, so the US elections, presidential elections usually happens in November of any particular year. And so you typically enter college in August, September. And then 2 months later, I was, immersed in this field of everyone huddling around, huge buildings watching the election results. And obviously it was a very shocking time for me during that time. So I kind of want to share three things. And this is both a reflection of current situations. Obviously I work within the youth space and public diplomacy space, but also during my time as a student and reflecting on itself. I also am on the interview panel for Princeton, so they typically call back alumni to interview. So I think I've done around 15 interviews so far since I graduated 5 years ago. And so I hope this perspective helps ground you and not to discourage you, but I think all of you are here because you are seeking more information to make an informed choice about the US and really going into this process wide-eyed and understanding all the nuances that comes with the US education right now. So the first thing I'll say is that the US is a huge space and a really, really, really deep place. When I first applied to the US, I applied for prestige, right? So obviously I went to Princeton, but I also didn't know of the various other colleges that existed that had very unique curriculums, as previously mentioned in the previous presentation. But also the US is huge. There are colleges like the New School in New York that does very unconventional academics. Or Middlebury, who does really good public diplomacy curriculum, or Colorado College with their unique term systems, or there's also St. John's College in the US, where instead of doing a typical curriculum, they learn they read 100 great works, 100 great books, and they learn through literature. But more importantly, when I first arrived in the US, I've been to the US sometimes, but I didn't visit my college before attending Princeton. So the first time I attended, I went to New Jersey. So New Jersey is right next to New York in the kind of tri-state area, right? It took a really long time for me to understand the geographical scale of the US. And it is huge, right? It is huge. I was in the Princeton debate panel, so I was in the debating team where we went from college to college every other weekend. And so we would take drives, I went from Princeton to Harvard, Princeton to Penn, for example, and you look at the map, and it's, okay, a relatively short distance it looks like, but the reality is actually an 8-hour drive. And Malaysia, an 8-hour drive can easily take you to somewhere north in Bangkok, if you drive all the way. And so the geographical size, I think, highlights the amount of diversity that happens. And so I want to say that there is not simply one version of America. You know, all the students here that you see today that are currently studying, right? All of them come from different places in the US studying. And they can, I'm sure, tell you that one place in the US is really, really, really not the same as the other. Similarly, that there's no one version of Malaysia, right? But there's no one version of Asia. These things also apply to the US, where you might meet someone who is a racist, right? You might meet someone who completely disagrees with you, or you cannot get on the same frequency as them whatsoever. And then you also meet people that will become best friends for the rest of your life. And that really is the level of diversity in the US. And so I think the thing I want to say here is that if you want if you want a comfortable place to study where you are constantly surrounded by Malaysians and then you don't get pushed out much, definitely go to the UK, go to Australia, where you can live in this small little bubble. But I think one thing I can say that in the US, US education, right, and this is consistent not only just for my own experience in Princeton, where we only had I think 5 to 6 Malaysians at one time, but for many other colleges as well, right? As you maybe have maximum, typically a dozen. If you go to Penn State or Ohio State, you might have a few, close to 100 Malaysians, but that's a different story. But the bottom line is that you will always be in an environment where you are one, the kind of the odd one out, right? You're always kind of the odd one out. But two, you're also in a place where a lot of people are the odd ones out. And so the one thing I can guarantee that if you go to US education is that you will be challenged and you will be faced with discomfort. But I think I would say that we're only with that discomfort where you find actual growth, both as new students wanting to learn more about the world, but also as an individual looking to look for themselves. I think I can say this for many American college students is that you first get there, you think you know yourself, and then suddenly you're put in this highly competitive environment with people who are seem so self-assured. And that journey to find yourself, I can assure you, will happen in the US in that regard. The second thing I want to say is that there simply is no time like the present. When I was, I think, in sophomore year, I was studying second year of college. I was having dinner with Kosukun, who is the former chief minister for Penang way back in the 80s. He was he's alumni of Princeton, he's class of 1970. I remember him telling me that when he was a student, which is between 1964 all the way to 1970, during that time, it was, if you know your history, there was the US Vietnam War that was going on. And that was at the peak of the protests, the anti war protests in the US. I remember Kosukun telling me I can't remember, he was either trapped in the protest or he actively joined, although his parents were like, no, don't go to the protest. But I remember he mentioned, it was his awakening. That was his really moment of change where he had so much revelations about the state of the world and the urgency of the world that he lived in at the time. And I think with everything that's going on in the US, right? I mean, the US at the time was engaged in one of the biggest wars in American history. And now as well, I mean, with the chaos that's happening, not only just with regard to Trump, but also all across the world, it does feel like the world is in crisis, right? I think that's a very scary feeling where you want to send a child or you yourself want to go to the US. But I want to say that perhaps we can consider that the world has always been in crisis, and it's always been that way. But I can also imagine how classes in the US must be at this time, especially for those who are deeply involved in debates about public policy, or even engrossed in the developments of AI and all the tech advancements we've been seeing today, right? In this day and age. As previously mentioned in the other presentation, in the US, one of the most common methods of learning, for us it was called precepts, but essentially it's a small group class, maximum 15 people, where you're an hour in with your, it can be a teaching assistant, it can be the professor themselves. But essentially you're trapped in this room for an hour, you have material to discuss, and you discuss it. And that helps provide so much clarity, and that level of unique education, I think, is really important to not only understand where you are in the world, But for me personally, I think that really pushed me to understand where my classmates were coming from. And you can meet, again, people from different walks of life. I also started working on digital rights of late, where in my line of work, we started learning about and investigating the impact of AI, algorithms, and social media platforms, and how it impacts our social fabric. For better or for worse, maybe perhaps a bit in my professional capacity for worse. So many of the decision-making processes and the room where it happens, right? It still happens in the US. There is a level of power, and I think it's so important, especially if you want to get in the thick of things, to be proximate to professors, to Silicon Valley companies, right, in the world that are making these advancements. And it's not for everyone, right? Perhaps you're not interested in these kinds of things. But if you're interested and you want to challenge yourselves to really tackling and thinking about the largest challenges and advancements in the world today, then there is, at least for the present in our current century, that there is no place like that in the US, other than the US right now. That there is going to be advancements, it's going to be a shifting pace of power. But right now, I can more than assure you that the level of understanding and intellectual depth that happens in these classrooms, in the corridors, and all these discussions you have late night within your campuses in US colleges, which happen to me, are going to be things that happen to you as well if you go to the US. The third thing I want to say is that, truth be told, it's most US grads and maybe current students, at least for me especially, have a sort of love-hate relationship with either their college or the US as a country itself, right? Personally, for me, Princeton, I wear this jacket, but I still have very, very, very mixed feelings about Princeton personally. Sometimes I'm filled with pride and happiness. Sometimes I'm feeling with a bit of dread, right? Like, oh gosh, this is it's a very heavy feeling. Um, I know we in Malaysia, right? The term kiasu is get in Hokkien. Oftentimes we call each other kiasu. Sometimes we call our neighboring country, Singaporeans, even more kiasu than us. But really, I think something we don't acknowledge is that Americans are super kiasu as well. They are highly, highly, highly competitive. And so one of the biggest shocks, personally, for me, is that in Malaysia, sometimes you can feel like we are medium-sized fish in a small pond. Malaysia is a tiny country in comparison to the scale of the world, right? Um, I think the most impending feeling that anyone will have going to the US is that you are suddenly a small, small, small fish. You are a tadpole in the huge ocean that is this level of talent and caliber and drive that exists quite squarely within US American college campuses. And so I remember my freshman year, we were required to do this course called writing seminar. So the writing seminar is essentially, you learn how to write an essay. Now I know this might be simple, right? Oh, like, you learn in SPM, you have one paragraph and then you keep points and that's it, right? In my time in this writing seminar, you learn to write a thesis, essentially a statement of argument. Seems pretty simple. And why on earth was I, getting, English in Malaysia, we're so used to getting English, blah, blah. And suddenly we're there, and why am I getting a C? Why am I getting a B minus? And what on earth is going on, right? And suddenly you feel like you're drowning a bit. It's going to take time. I think the reality is that the first few months of acclimatization to the US is quite difficult, and that's the reality of it, right? And I think that's really where the challenge is. But being surrounded by, I think, peers in my American college experience that were not only driven, they were cooperative, but more importantly, they pushed me to be, I want to say, the academically the best version of myself. And that I think is true regardless if you are an engineering major, regardless if you are a computer science major, regardless if you are public policy, chemistry, bio. These things are true across the board. And that competitiveness, to be able and willing to get into the thick of things, I think that is so, 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 so uniquely kind of some would say, some would call it a piece of the American dream, some would call it hyper-capitalism, some would call it, a neoliberal order we live in, right, where we are dissipated into, economic units. But I think that it is a challenge worth taking. I think in the pursuit of this big truth, right? Be it academically or be it in your social lives, being in the US definitely taught me that. It taught me to challenge myself to find a place academically. It challenged me to find a place socially as well, right? You have to figure out where you are and what piece of community you want to take a piece of. And more importantly, I think in the US, as I said before, it's the best place for an indecisive person. If you don't know what you want to study, go to the US. People make their own majors, right? People take a major and double major and take multiple minors. I think you need clear understanding that we are in a changing world and your career is not going to be linear in nature. I think Malaysia, and we're slowly learning, many universities in Malaysia are slowly adopting the liberal arts method, right? And just because you study engineering doesn't mean you'll be an engineer the moment you graduate. Just because you're a computer scientist doesn't mean you're going to be a computer scientist. In this changing world where the landscape of our careers, the landscape of what passions you will find in 10 to 20 years is going to change. And I think what the previous presentation mentioned, the value of the liberal arts major is precisely that, the ability to adapt and the ability to change. But ironically, I think that's one piece of the US education system that is simply not going to change. That is this challenge to be the best that you can and to be pushed to that level where your potential will bring you. So I understand that there's some anxiety, and fear in the larger package of things, right? So I know I think it would also be good to spend some time. I know this is a keynote address, but they also, told me like let this be a space where we can hear a few voices and see where people are at the moment. So I'm going to open up the floor actually to hear maybe from 2 to 3 either prospective students, applicants, and or even parents, right? Where your feelings are at the moment, and where your head is at. Maybe what are you feeling in terms of applying to the US? What are you anxious about? What are you excited about? And right, if you perhaps give a name to these feelings. So I'm going to give, if anyone would like to volunteer, and then someone's going to go around with a mic. Someone's going to have a mic, right, to see who would like to say a few words to share they are, where they are in the process of thinking. I'll open it up to the floor. If not, I'm gonna cold call it otherwise. So I'm gonna give you I'm gonna do this a bit of a simulation, right? Versus if you're in a teaching assistant circle, it's just like this, right? The professor speaks for a bit, and then they expect independent contributions. So I'm gonna give you 10 seconds for a volunteer. If not, I'm going to cold call someone. All right, right in front. All right, give her a round of applause. Yeah. You can see your name as well.
Hello, my name is Isabel, and I'm interested in pursuing legal studies in the USA or entering law school afterwards. So I think that the anxiety I have is about not getting a scholarship because the education in the USA is much higher in cost and it demands much higher finances.
Yeah.
So this is my anxiety.
Thank you, Isabel, for sharing. I know there's going to be a session later for financial aid and how the money works, right? I understand as well. I mean, the one good thing I can share is that at least the Malaysian ringgit is stronger compared to the US. I remember, and there's a lot of anxiety attached to this, right? Especially for parents who at least put some part of the bill. I entered freshman college. The currency rate was 4.1 ringgit to the dollar at the time. And then now, then I think junior year, it rose all the way to 4.5, 4.6. And so suddenly we had like a 20 to 30% increase in the amount of fees I had. And so that, I won't say anything to that. That's a very fair anxiety, right? I will say though that I think I would like to state that if you can calculate it, it may be worth it, right? It may be worth it. What we do know is that if you just do decide to work in the US for a bit afterwards, which many people do, you get either 1 or 3 years of visa extensions afterwards to work in the US, you get your share back. And more importantly, I think you can't put really a price on the level of independence and intellectual forwardness that comes with the US in many ways. You can say, you argue, go to another place, you find intellectual academic studies one way or not. I think on average, one thing I've observed throughout the years, if you point out in many Malaysians I've seen going abroad, one way of seeing who went to American education is that they're always willing to think outside the box. And that is constantly true across the board, right? You're constantly pushed outside the box. And I think that's a value that's an economic value of your own personal growth that is very difficult to attach a value to. So I won't say, yeah, there's a lot of anxiety attached to the money, right? So definitely, I think this is why you're here today, to really understand how to navigate these financial intricacies and decision-making processes, right? Thank you, Isabel. Maybe we get one more person to share as well. One more person. Maybe your parent. Yeah, soon over there. Give a round of applause.
Hi everyone, I'm Ali. So pretty much one of the main reasons I want to apply US is because I don't really know what exactly I want to do. So I have like a lot of different fields I'd like to dive in. But I am like, a bit anxious on like the college life a bit more. So that's really why I'm here, to be honest. And yeah, and that's like how the social life is there and like college life, dorm life. That's pretty much my main concern. That is making me, be on the edge about applying. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ali. Give a round of applause for it. Thanks for being valuable. I mean, yeah, again, right? I entered my undergraduate education without knowing what I was doing. I was almost considering computer science at one point, and then I hit the theoretical part of computer science, and I was like, okay, this is not okay. This is fine. But it allowed me to fail in that, right? For us, we could take a class, and you could pass fail it. So you can take a class without consequences to your ABCD, rather than just a pass or a fail, which is really helpful to explore in one detail. In terms of the social life, um, I think the reality, and maybe this is not apparent for people who are not still in the system, right? Is that when you graduate and you're adult, maybe all the parents here can relate, right? Life is what you want to make of it, and especially the people you associate with and the friends you want to make and commit to. Those are things that are active choices. It's very times studies show that we fall into our friendship groups when we are in school, when we're in close environments. The one thing I'll say about the US is that there's going to be a group that you will find, you'll seek out, right? It's a bit cliquish, yes, I will say that sometimes, right? Obviously, there's the reality of the fraternities, sororities. There's obviously I was part of the debate nerds at some point, and then there are the a cappella nerds, and all these different groups, right? And I think the reality is that finding people that are relatable to you, and especially those who are interested in what you are interested in, that breadth of diversity happens, I think, in most college campuses in the US, where there is a dedicated people of commune where you can find your person. So that definitely is a lot of anxiety. And anywhere you go, right? But I think the point is being able to step out of your comfort zone and having a system that will guide you and absorb you and welcome you into participating in that social system. It's going to be a challenge, no doubt, but I will assure you that it's more than a while worthwhile, especially finding out where you kind of belong to. And that process of self-discovery is, I think, more valuable in the long picture, the big picture of your life compared to anything else. Thanks for the question, Ali. So I don't have much time left, but I just want to, in my closing, again, my cousin is in US college right now. My nephew just left, so I kind of am very. All these thoughts are I speak to me hard as I've reflected upon them the past few years. The message for the parents I have is this: is that I'm not a parent, but I've seen also the experience. So I worked with 16-year-olds in 2018, and I've seen them grow all the way to now. So I've seen them for 8 years, and I think more than anything, when you see a young person grow, you get a lot of fulfillment watching them enter and take on challenges by themselves and allowing them the independence and freedom to go for it, obviously with your guidance, right? So if your parents here, I think don't forget about that fulfillment. And if your child is interested, nurture that independence and curiosity and interest by supporting their journeys. For students who are here, or prospective students who are applying, right? The question I have here is if you have, go forth and challenge yourself. If you're here already, you started learning about the process, it is a complicated process. I think anyone here would say, right, compared to the UK, Australia, the American college application say the most one, I think also the most complicated application system in the world. But that's already a challenge of itself. So as you start this process, be patient and be disciplined, right, in going off. And there are rewards out there for your reaping. So go on, go to the US, take on the challenge, take on the resources that comes with the US education, and come back home and build a better Malaysia for all of us. So as you observe, today's and tomorrow's workshops, yeah, think of it as the start of a journey, and only but a small piece of the larger journey that you'll have altogether. So I'm going to end a quote, one of the first few lyrical lines from a very famous musical that I managed to watch in person in the US. It's called Hamilton, if you've heard of it. Right? So, it opens, the musical opens in Hamilton's about one of the first few founding fathers. The US was a really desolate place, right? And about finding your own, making your own space in the great unknown. So, the lyrics go, I'm just like my country, I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. So I hope that through this workshop, you'll take your shot and apply to the US. Thank you very much, everyone. All the best. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason, for the powerful and thought-provoking keynote speech. I think a lot of us here can really relate to some truths that Jason has shared. For example, how different parts of the US have their own cultures, and how as Malaysian students, you might be one of those handful amount of Malaysians, or even the only one in your entire year. And I can relate to that myself. On my own campus, there are only 5 Malaysians, and I'm the only one from my batch. So Jason also reminds us that there'll be moments of awakening, times when you discover new sides of yourself, even though the US might be going through political or social crisis that's not unique to one country. The world is constantly in flux. And in those moments, you can still keep learning, growing, and adapting. And one thing I really loved about the speech just now was that competitiveness. How we often label Asian countries as kiasu, scared to lose, but in reality, that spirit exists everywhere. And maybe most reassuring of all, we are reminded that US is one of the best places for those who are indecisive because you get to explore before you actually commit. So once again, thank you, Jason, for sharing your journey and for giving us a clear and honest picture of what to expect and what is possible. So let's give him one big round of applause. We're going to take a 10 minutes break now, so feel free to grab water, stretch your legs, or maybe turn to the person next to you and share your biggest takeaway from Jason's talk. We'll see you back here at 10:25, 10:30 sharp for our next session, Living the American Dream, Life and Culture Insights. Thank you.
Some lo-fi.
I thought she graduated already.
Huh?
She graduated already.
Oh.
The lo-fi girl.
Oh yeah, she did, right?
I keep glitching, bro.
I love lo-fi girl, bro. Music is so good.
She graduated already. I told
Oh. I don't know what happened, bro. No, I cannot use the careless Wi-Fi, bro. So ass. Says no data. Hotspot. Yeah, prepaid. Yeah. I have 200 GB data. Hotspot. Data, bro. Now okay. Fine. Bro, careless. Not the internet.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to stretch and recharge. Now, it is time for our first panel discussion today, Living the American Dream, Life and Culture Insights. This is where we move beyond academics and dive into what life in the US is really like. We're talking about everything from culture shock, like adapting to social norms, weather, and food, to building friendships, balancing independence with responsibility, and finding a place in a whole new environment. And yes, you might even hear a few funny or slightly embarrassing stories from our panelists along the way. Alright, so for this session, we have Daniel Harif, Parameshwaran, Layla, and guiding the conversation, our moderator, Nathan Lim, who will make sure we get both the serious insights and the fun behind the scenes story. So please join me in welcoming Daniel, Parameshwaran, Layla, and Nathan to the stage.
Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to Living the American Dream Life and Culture Insights. I'm Nathan, and for the next 45 minutes, I'll be your tour guide through the lens of three of the Malaysian students here thriving in America. So from studying to snow days, frat parties, halal food hunts, homesick nights, and everything in between. So next slide, please. Oh, yeah, sorry, one more slide. Yeah, so we'll start off with the introduction. Danish, would you like to start this? Okay.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, everyone. Assalamualaikum. My name is Daniel Harith. A bit of myself, I guess. Pre-context. I studied SPM and MRSM in Kuala Lumpur, and then Alhamdulillah, I got a Petronas scholarship to study A levels in Kuala Lumpur Jaafar, KDJ, and I did A levels for 2 years. I took 4 subjects: math, mathematics, chem, and physics. Yeah, and then after that. Alhamdulillah, I got into UC Berkeley to study chemical engineering for the next 4 years. So right now I'm a rising sophomore. Last year was my first year in America. It was quite pleasant. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Parashwaran, and I'm a recent graduate with a master's in public administration from the University of Kansas. Before this, I had completed my degree in history from the University of Northern Iowa, which I had transferred from Health University in 2020, whereby I spent 2 years in the ABP program. And before that, I have also completed my IGCSEs at an international school. It is a pleasure meeting you all.
Hi everyone, it's nice meeting all of you. My name is Laila. A little bit about myself. I did high school in Sekolah Sri Putri Cyberjaya. It's a full boarding school, and then I got the Yayasan Telecom Malaysia scholarship to further my studies. And I did American degree transfer program at Dedis University here. And then after that, it's like for a year. And then I went to UW Madison, and now I'm a rising junior, majoring in electrical engineering.
A bit about myself as well. I'm Nathan. I used to study at Catholic High School in PJ, and then I went to KYU for my A levels. And then after that, I was studying for 2 years in UK at the University of Edinburgh. And this year, coming September, I'm doing a year exchange to contact for my junior year. Yes. So I believe all of you would be interested to find out like how is it like living in America. So we will start off with the first question to Daniel. So like, do you have any funny stories you have encountered in US in your first year?
We didn't rehearse this. Okay, sure. A funny story. I don't know if it's appropriate to say it, but yeah, sure. So California is known for their weather, their food, the culture, and when I joined this club, I'll talk more about this club later. It's a consulting club in Berkeley, but one of the questions that they asked me like, oh, why did you choose California from all of the states? And jokingly, I say, oh yeah, because I love the Asian baby girls in California. So because of that, it made a very big joke, but I'm joking obviously. So I prioritize the weather for California, that's for sure. But yeah, that's a not really funny, but kind of.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Move on to Parmesh. Can I get a bit of a viewpoint of how do you see American life and American dream as a whole?
Okay, so for me, the main source of American culture and like American society before I came to the US was mainly through what I see both from American films as well as from what I read in newspapers. And so like I know that people are mostly either like conservative, right wing, uh, you know, all of the things that are associated with the Republican Party. And on the other hand, other Americans can be like, like liberal. They are wanting immigrants because they know that they are America is a country built by immigrants, and they want equity and social justice. And so, like, the thing that attracted me towards America and American society was like the voices that I've heard from like the social justice side and from the liberal side, because I identify very much with those ideologies and rhetoric.
Thank you very much. Leila, could you share about one key moment, core memory you have encountered throughout your uni life in the US?
One core memory would be, okay, can I share like one embarrassing story? So, like a little bit of context if you've never been to the US before. So in the US, like the toilet cubicles, like they have really huge gap between the toilet cubicles and then at the bottom of the door. It's really huge that you could fit two fingers inside, like two fingers between the holes. So it is ridiculously huge for me. Like even if you don't mean to look inside, you can always see what the person is doing inside. So there's this one time, the first time I went to the States, like I was queuing for my line and then I accidentally made eye contact with the person inside. It's really embarrassing. So from there I avoid looking anywhere like near cubicles whenever I'm queuing for my line.
That is something to think ahead of before you go to the US. So next up, we'll move on to some big wow moment they have encountered in the US, like things that make you stop and think that, oh, that is different. So, culture shock. Leila, could you start off with what did you encounter in the US that you just think it's different?
Yeah, like one of the biggest culture shocks that I've experienced when I first got to the States was tipping culture. So in Malaysia, we don't usually tip, right? We just pay for our food and then leave. But in the US, you are expected to pay a little bit more than what you actually have to pay. So there's this one time I remember me and my friends, like it was the first time going out to dinner, and then when we wanted to pay for our food, like the cashier just flipped the screen, and then I could see that it's like saying selected amount, 15%, 20%, 25%. And I didn't know whether like it was rude or not to not give any tips. But then I looked at the cashier and he was looking straight at me. Like I could see his face saying that he was expecting me to tip some. So I was scared and then I actually just like press any button in the middle and hope it was okay. So later I asked my American friends like, why do you guys have tipping culture, right? Because in Malaysia we don't really have any of those. So it says like he said like those service workers they earn really low hourly wages, so tips are like a big part of the income, which actually made more sense to me after that. But I still think it's one of the things that nobody prepares you before coming to the States.
Thank you, Leila. Daniel, what about you? Like, what surprised you most about campus living, and how did you adapt academically and socially?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that's a very important question that you need to think about. Because coming from A levels, I got a chance to apply for both UK and the US. And the big stereotype, the thing that everyone talks about in the US is that because I had to decide between going to UK and going to Imperial. Sorry, no, going to the US. Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Alhamdulillah, I got into Imperial and also UC Berkeley, so I need to choose between both of that. And then a lot of people say like, yeah, go to the US, it's gonna be fun, it's gonna be more free, it's gonna be like more social. it's gonna be easier in terms of academics. It's a big lie. I think that's the biggest lie that they will tell you. It's the biggest lie ever. A lot of people say that U.S. education is easy. It's not. Period. First of all, in terms of the grading system, I'm not sure if you guys know, the grading system there is horrendous. If you want to get an A, not even A plus or A minus, getting an A is 93%. It depends on the class, but usually it's going to be around the 93 to 90% to get an A. To get a B is 80%. So getting a A plus, sorry, B plus is 87%, and B is 83%, and D minus is 80%, and after that you go down. So C plus is 77%, and then 73% for C, and then 70% for C minus. And below 7%, you fail. So it really depends on the university itself, of course. But for Berkeley, we have this called grade deflation, where sometimes people are too smart, so they get higher than a certain percentage threshold, and like then because of that, people are getting like B plus for getting a 90%. So it depends on the university, but it's very, very hard sometimes. But I'm not here to like deteriorate your aspirations to go to the US. I really believe US is the place to go. I guess another one, a very short one, is as a Muslim living there, it's a bit it's a culture shock, I guess, in a sense, because well, first of all, you need to share dorms. Like on the same floor, you need to share like guys and girls. You're not gonna share the same room, but the same floor, you're gonna have like co-ed genders. So you're gonna be mixing it. You're gonna use the same bathrooms as them. So it's gonna be a bit weird, but you slowly progress. And as a Muslim, you need to try to be reserved and to have your principles. You know. So those are like my culture shocks there.
Thank you. Para, what about you? How have you coped with the culture shock and like the accent change and things in general?
Okay, so in terms of culture shock, as a foodie, most of the shocks came from culinary related aspects. So, like for example, when I ate out in the dining center, they were mentioning that they were serving burgers, and I asked if there was any chicken burger available because as a Hindu, I can't eat beef. But that was the first time I've learned that within the US, there's no such thing as chicken burgers because either a burger is made out of beef or it's made out of vegan patty. However, the closest thing that I could find to a chicken burger is a chicken sandwich, which is basically like a chicken burger, which you can find in Malaysia, but you replace a chicken patty with a fried piece of chicken breast. And another culture shock was to discover the existence of graham crackers, which I think is very amazing because rather than roasting marshmallows on a fireplace, how we make graham crackers is that first we roast the marshmallows and then place the marshmallow between two pieces of graham crackers, and then on top of the marshmallow you place a cube of chocolate bar, and you watch the chocolate melt due to the heat of the marshmallow. And like when you put that thing in the mouth, it really makes me feel so good. I love it.
I think that's what we call small simulation. But nice observation. What about like the community there, like LGBTQ community?
Okay, yeah. So another shock. Well, I wouldn't say shock because like for me, I am. But like one of the things that I've experienced in US was that I have made my first few LGBTQ friends in US because although I was aware of their existence of such a community in the US, I have never met, let alone befriended, a gay or a transgender or a non-binary person until I came to the US. And so when I made the opportunity to befriend people from the LGBTQ community in the US, I made the effort to like learn about them, like how is their life, how is their culture, what are the challenges that they are facing, and like how can we be a good ally to them so that they could live a normal, happy life together with the rest of society. And so it was really a eye-opening experience for me, I would say.
Right, thank you there. That truly is some insights on some culture shock you will face in the American. So you know that when culture shock fades like 1 to 2 months in, maybe the homesickness will kick in. So we shall move to that. So Leila, would you like to start off with like how did you cope with your homesickness?
Yeah, surely. So during the first like 2 weeks of living there, I'm sure most of us would feel like really homesick because we are traveling like 10,000 kilometers away from friends, families, and the convenience of your home back in Malaysia. So it's kind of hard to adjust to the new environment, while also having all your assignments, quizzes, exams piling up like around the corner. So it's kind of hard to adjust to balance between your trying to adapt to new environment and also your academics. So I feel like the first 2 3 weeks is kind of like the hardest time for most of us. But I feel like my homesickness comes from missing Malaysian food. Like I feel I realize that I miss how much I realize that I miss how easy it is to find good cheap food here in Malaysia. Like when I was studying at Taylor's University doing my American degree program for 1 year, there's always this one makcik outside the Taylor's compound who usually sell really good cheap food. And I would usually stop by there to buy some lunch after class so that like I wouldn't have to cook for myself, and then like it's also cheap and I don't have to pay for overpriced restaurants here. So like in the US, you don't have this kind of convenience anymore. It's either you spend a lot of money outside going to restaurants, which I guess like cost a lot of money. Also, you can also DoorDash, which also costs a lot of money. Or the last option would be just to cook for yourself. So so I feel like you don't have this kind of convenience like finding cheap food there in the US, especially if you're like a Muslim and then you're finding halal food. It's kind of it's actually hard. So like in Wisconsin, we only have a few halal options like halal restaurants there that sell Pakistani, Arabic, Indian food. But other than that, they are all like seafood restaurants that you can eat.
What about the weather like? Because you studied in Wisconsin and I heard last year it hits negative 30 degrees.
Oh yeah, Wisconsin. For your information, Wisconsin is one of the coldest states in the U.S. So, and Wisconsin is between two big lakes. So it is like when winter comes, usually around negative 20 degrees, and then plus with the wind chill, it's gonna be around negative 30. Yeah.
Wow. Maybe you can move on to Daniel, like share about how your American friend group and like Malaysian friend group has helped you to cope with the homesickness.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think homesickness is a very big thing when you study abroad, of course. Um, I think that the biggest thing that you would notice very quickly is that homesickness, you don't really come the first 2 months of you studying there. Because you're very busy to adapt with all the classes, all the clubs, trying to make new friends. So, and then it's that your brain is overpopulated with things that you don't even think about home. But I think it starts to kick in during like, it starts to creep in during the third or fourth month in America, or maybe studying abroad in general, where you start to settle down first, and then you will think, oh my god, yeah, I miss my family, I miss my friends. So I think the biggest thing that you need to have is you need to have the very strong support group. And that's very cliche, but it's very important to take note. So so yeah, the picture over there, I have friends playing tennis with my Malaysian friends there. It's very lovely. So you need to build that connection with the people there. I think that's a very one thing that you need to think note is that the Malaysian population in each university, because if it's too low, then you get the opportunity to like diverse yourself in like the people who live there, but then it might be a bit hard. Not hard. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be very hard for you to like find the people that you actually relate to. So you need to have that balance between Malaysian friends and American friends. But another thing is that don't stick to your Malaysian friends solely. I feel like that's the most important thing about studying abroad is to have that diverse friend group so that you can share of your culture. So I mean is that you need to find and explore, go out of your comfort zone and make American friends. Don't just stick to the same group. So that's the beauty of studying abroad, I think.
Mhm. Parash, can you share a bit about how like homesickness which used to mental health and how you can cope with that?
Okay, so in terms of homesickness, the greatest challenge that I faced was like the shortening hours as winter approaches. Because in my campus in Iowa, usually during September and late August when the fall semester begins, there will be sunrise from like 6 a.m. until 8:15 p.m. However, as winter approaches, the days get shorter, and so during November, December, the sun will rise up like 7:30, 7:45 a.m., and the sun will set like around 5 o'clock or so. And so, seeing that the day get shorter, it affected my mind in the sense that like, why is it so dark so fast? Why can't I get more sunlight? And so, my mental health was affected in terms of that. I have gotten seasonal affective disorder. And so what I did was that I took the effort to go for weekly therapy sessions so that I could help out with my anxiety, with my depressive episodes, and to make sure that I took of myself in the best way I could. However, I would say that due to my therapy sessions, I have learned how to be adaptable and resilient. And I think that this is how I have been able to appreciate the beauty of winter because after a certain point, I have like learned to enjoy the long nights that winter provides and to enjoy the snow and to appreciate the beauty of snow and to like enjoy the cold weather when I wouldn't have otherwise be able to. Thank you.
All right, thanks for sharing that. So now we have covered all the worries and anxiety you might have in the States. So maybe we could move on to a lighter note and something more exciting, like the campus, dorm, and community life in the States. So maybe you can start off with Daniel, like how is your campus life?
It's amazing. I think that's the biggest thing, the most thing, the biggest thing that I really love about staying up in America is just the diverse thing that you can do. It's different from UK, from Australia. The opportunities there are a lot. So I think the biggest thing that I can talk about myself, especially, it's kind of like my personality. Some people might say is joining a consulting club in Berkeley. So what is a consulting club, right? So a consulting club is basically just we call it a pre-professional club in Berkeley where they consult companies that real actual working adults. That's another topic that you want to ask yourself, like why are students advising adults? But yeah, that's a different topic. But what we do is that we consult companies based in America, most of them. So for example, for me, I worked with Rio Tinto, which is one of international mining company, and also one NPO called Concern Worldwide, and we actually get paid. Like every semester, we get around like 50K USD per semester, which is quite a lot. And we use all that money to pay for our development in terms of our career. Like they will come in, like bring in talks from alumni, and a lot of our alumni go to like big consulting firms like MBBs, like McKinsey, Bain, MCG. So that I think that's a very big exposure. That's a very unique thing. I don't think a lot of universities worldwide have that opportunity to be working with real companies out there. And second of all, I just living a community life, having friends with all diverse background. Here you can see that one of the things that I did was going to the office of International Monetary Fund, IMF in Washington DC, with my friend Muiz, and we met a Malaysian there working there. Is the opportunities there are very wide, very like array, very diverse. So it's very interesting.
What about Leila? Could you share a bit about your experience?
Yeah, so during my freshman year, I live off campus, so I couldn't say much about living in the dorms. So I live off campus because it is way cheaper than living in the dorms, but if you have the money, then please do it. So there are a lot of benefits of living in the dorms that I could say, like you could mingle with more people. It's easier to make friends with more people, and it's easier to mingle with the locals. There are also like dining plans that they offer, so that you don't meals are provided, so you don't have to cook. Um, so wait, so about community life, I could say that one of the big tip to make friends is to join clubs, whether related to academics or hobbies. Like I joined one of the clubs about engineering club and also orchestra club, so that's where I made friends who shared the same interest. Also, I could say that being an international student means that you stick with international students at first. Like I have a few friends from China, Middle East, and also from neighboring countries like Thailand, Indonesia. So I would say that just be brave and introduce yourself to your classmates, to the club. Just be out there because people are also scared. Like other people are also scared. They want to make friends with you, but so I would say just be brave and introduce yourself, make good impression so that you can have more friends.
Right. What about Paramesh? What was the most unexpected activities you've joined?
Okay, so as far as I can think of, the most unexpected club that I have experienced was in my graduate school, where there is an official Taylor Swift fan club that is actually governed by students, and they have like their own committee. And I did some digging, and apparently I've heard rumors that Taylor Swift herself had visited my campus occasionally. So like knowing that there's this singer who is like has this particular level of association and attachment with my university to the point to the extent that there is an official fan club uh, run and organized by my students of by the students of the university is just crazy. And even though I'm not a fan of Taylor Swift, I must really respect the admiration those in the fan club have for her.
Right. Thanks for sharing. I think we'll move on to the last section, right? Freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. So I think we can make it a more open session. I will just pass it on to Leila, and then you guys can chip in about how your traveling experience is like in the US and how you deal with the freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. Right, Leila?
Okay, so talking about freedom and responsibility. So what hit me the most when I first got to the state wasn't just the weather or the environment, but it was the freedom that I have in my hands. Like I have 100% freedom. I can do whatever I want. Nobody is there to control me, or nobody is there to say no. So a little bit of context about myself. I came from a full boarding school in Cyberjaya. So basically, every step was monitored, like from my grades to even asking permission for the smallest things. Like you don't have the freedom like you have right now in the US. So there's a lot of things to try in the US, especially it's a four-season country, right? Where you can do a lot of things in the winter, for example, like skiing, sledding, and also you can. I did a lot of road trips around the US. Also during the summer, you can also try hiking at national parks if you're like a big fan of nature. In the fall, you can do pumpkin carving or apple picking. So my point is like there's a lot of things to do and there's always something to do. And with a lot of freedom also comes a lot of responsibility. You have to know your own limits, or like just remember why are you exactly there. Like if you're, for example, if you're in a scholarship, and then by all means, like please enjoy your life there. But don't let your GPA slip the requirements or yeah, like that. And personally, for me as a Muslim, I have to be there are a lot of things to be mindful of, like partying, drinking, dating culture, like everything is around you. And it's up to you at the end of the day. It's up to you, your discipline, your moral, your values. So, like, your life is 100% in your hands, and nobody's gonna say no. Nobody will know what you want to do. Like, your family is gonna be 10,000 kilometers away from you, and they will not know what you're doing unless you told them, right? So what I'm saying is that you have to know how to balance between freedom and responsibility.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's because you have that sense of freedom, so then you need to put in the responsibility that it means, like the bucket says, right? So yeah, just travel here and there. It's been only 1 year for me, and I've traveled I think like 12 states, 13 states. It's amazing. Just go there with your friends, but of course you need to know like the do's and don'ts, and yeah, just keep your priorities straight. Study when you need to study, work hard and play hard, and that's my motto. So just enjoy your life.
Okay, so in terms of freedom and responsibilities, I didn't like take the opportunity to travel much because like I'm not that huge fan of traveling in general. However, one of my friends during our summer break, I had the opportunity to follow them to a state park in Iowa, and we did like things like hiking, setting up like a camp, having a campfire and all that, which I really enjoyed. And when Layla mentioned about like responsibilities, like how uh, some people will need to be aware about partying, drinking, and all that, I will be honest and open, and I will admit that I've had the opportunity to go to a bar during my graduate school, and and when I was there, it was really a new experience for me because like I've never faced the environment that I've had in the bar before that moment in time. And although I was an extrovert, it was really too much for me, and I like within half an hour I just came out because I couldn't handle the environment in the bar.
Sorry, I just have one more point that I just want to say. I think just the sense of independence really is really very important when you study abroad. And studying abroad in America, especially, because you need to have that sense of responsibility in doing things. For example, things that you would never think about. For example, doing your tax. Yeah, you need to like sign out your taxes every year annually to the board. And for example, to move in, like next in a couple of weeks, I'm going to move into my new apartment. So I need to buy my own bed, I need to buy my own things, need to pay my bills. So you really become the adult that you want to be in the future by studying abroad. So that's one thing that you can think on.
Right, thank you. I think this is where we wrap up, and I will spotlight a few of the photos that you guys shared to me on a larger size so that you guys can see. Um, yeah, this is Leila's trip and all photos, and then this is Daniel's traveling photos. Yeah. So now we'll open the floor to any questions you have to the panelists, to the speakers, anything you want to get to know about America in general. We take like 2 to 3 questions. Anyone?
Go ahead. The guy in the black shirt first. Good question. Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think one thing about the gun violence, of course, you need to understand that America is a continent. It's big. Wherever you go, it's gonna be violence. Gonna be crimes, right? So personally, for me, living in Berkeley, California, I haven't experienced any sort of violence. It's pretty safe in my area. I guess it depends on the area too. Because if you go to the hood, I guess for some might say, of course it will be more violent there. But it's all about the news. Like they get views from getting those high headlines. So of course they want to show the dark side of America. But on a daily basis, it's very much peaceful. It's chill. You don't need to be worried. Yeah.
I think I would like to answer this question because when I applied to the University of Northern Iowa as an undergraduate, it was at a moment in time when the death of George Floyd and the protests that are related to it was still fresh in my mind. And as someone with dark skin, I was afraid of like if I was to walk outside of campus and go to the downtown, will I be putting myself in danger because I am not white or things like that. So what I did was that when it was time for me to transfer to a American university of my choice, what I've done was that I took a look at state rankings, like what are the rankings in terms of like crime, murder, hate crime, and things like that. And I filtered through and selected the safest states as per the rankings. And from those states, I will look at like the cities which various different colleges and universities are located in, and I will choose the safest cities out of those states so that I could have the best possible experiences and that I could have as a student in America.
Right, thank you. Any more questions or you want to add on?
So I don't know about other universities, but for my university, UW Medicine, we have this one app where they will have notifications if something bad is happening, like some shooting is happening on State Street or whatever street, like anybody is carrying a knife. But it's basically, to me, it's safe as long as you don't involve yourself in this kind of protest where you can get yourself in danger, but you don't have to worry so much about that. I think it's kind of like safe.
Yeah, I think we can have one more question maybe.
This is a question for Daniel, is it?
Yeah.
How did you save money that you can travel 12 states in 1 year?
Wait, you put me on the spot, huh?
I quit a consulting company.
Okay, so the consulting club doesn't pay to my pockets. They go to the, because we're an NGO technically. So it's like an NPO, so we don't get profit itself. Okay, saving. I think, because of course I got my scholarship, so that's the main thing. I got my scholarship, and then yeah, I'll be a liar if I don't say that I asked my parents for a bit of money. That's that's a big thing. But I think I'm very blessed with the scholarship, so I don't need to pay for the tuition fees, for the living costs. So the traveling is most partly due to my savings too. But usually usually okay, don't copy me, but I would use my money first to travel, and if I don't have the money to pay my rent, I'll call my parents. But don't do that for sure. But as of right now, I think my financials are still good. But yeah, I think you just need to save in terms of like eating out. I think it depends on your priorities. If you want to eat out every night, then yes, of course, you can't go to your New York trip during December. But if you save up, it's quite cheap, relatively cheap if you buy groceries and cook food. You can ask the man there, Moise Zafri, he's the best cook in Berkeley. But he cooks a lot. Yeah, so yeah, just cook and save money. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Oh yeah. I'm on a full scholarship under the Petronas scholarship. Yeah. So they pay like my tuition fees and also my living costs. Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions on the phone? Okay, then I guess we'll close the panel session with short closing. So like from quad dogs to halal plans and unlimited dining plans to road trip as well. What you have heard today is the American dream is less about destination but more about how you navigate the journey across. So on behalf of the panelists, thank you for listening and thank you for your curiosity and questions. So may your own path, whether to anywhere in the States and beyond, be built by adaptability, community, and just a right balance of hard work So travel safely and hope you get what you offer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel, Parmesan, Leila, of course, our moderator Nathan, for such an honest and eye-opening conversation. We have just heard some valuable truths about the life in the US, like from culture shock to adjusting new social norms, weather, and even food, to dealing with homesickness and learning how to ask for help when needed. So let's give them one big round of applause for sharing their stories in slide. Before we move into our next session, let's all take a quick 2-minute stretch. You can stand up, move around a little, and get your blood flowing. Stand up, guys. The next session will begin at 11:25, and it will be on pre-college pathways and styles of completion.
Can you guys get Jinshi, Harish, and Jinri? Harish is here. Where are your friends?
Where is? They went out.
Second one. It's only 11 o'clock.
Halfway there, halfway.
It's not halfway.
Quarter way. And tomorrow as well.
Same time. But tomorrow don't have dinner. Can you skip dinner tonight? Huh? Not sure yet. Nick is not sure yet. Oh, Harish! Faster go find your friends! Go for them! Mine is done, right?
He just went out.
What? 2 more minutes. Mana kawan-kawan kamu? Saya sudah mati. Cepat, 1 minit lagi. Kalau tak, kita berbuka sudah. Right now. Jesus. Which one is it? The jam jacket? You want your jacket? Yeah, no. Alright, guys. I hope you are ready to move your
your body, and now you're more energetic than before. So, moving on to the next session, we'll hear from Liu Ji, Legion Gray, and Harish Varman, who will be sharing about pre-college pathways and styles of application, helping you understand the different routes you can take before heading to the US college, and which might be the best fit for you. So, let's welcome them to the stage.
Hi guys.
Alright, so hi everyone. My name is Harish. I'm a Columbia student. I'm a rising sophomore there, and I plan to major in electrical engineering.
Uh, Hi, Zenhui. I'm studying computer science at De Anza. I'll be transferring to University of California in another 1 2 years, graduating about 2021. Hi, I'm Junshi. I did A-levels here at Taylor's under JPA. I went to Minerva. It's a new school, pretty cool. Check it out. I'm a recent graduate at class of 2025, and I'm going to grad school next fall. And I did natural sciences with concentrations in physics and chemistry and a minor in math. So before we proceed, can I just do a demographic thing again? So raise your hand if you are doing SPM or IGCSE. Raise your hand if you're doing a pre-U program. Raise your hand if you're doing a pre-U program, so like A levels, IB. So one for you. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We can. Uh, yeah. So today we're gonna talk about what the things that you should do during your application. So that includes the college programs, which most of you are doing, and then gap years, the application cycles, application styles, and the common list. Yeah.
So before we start, I'd just like to explain why this is an important presentation. Well, just last year, there was a 38% surge in US applications, meaning that you are now competing with more people to get the same spots at US universities. Of course, this translates to a drop in acceptance rates, right? So this means that it's getting more and more competitive every year. So this is why you start planning early. I mean, in my opinion, planning early for US application is not a choice, something that you have to do if you plan to apply to the US. Yeah.
Right. So we have separated the pre-college programs in Malaysia into three main categories. The first one is the globally recognized ones. So meaning that if you're not sure where you want to study, may or may not including Americas, then you want programs that open all doors. So that includes A levels, IB, and SCPM. Then the second column is for country-specific programs. So this is for you if you're thinking of you want to apply to Americas, but you also want a second country as a specific as a backup option, or the other way around, in which you, for example, you want to go to Australia, but you also want to apply to Americas as a side quest. So those include Matrix, CIMP, OSMAT, SACE, and SPM. And the last one is American programs. So these are the programs that prepare students to go to the Americas. And in Malaysia, usually we have ADP, and in the US, there are community colleges. So since most of you are already doing pre-U, I'll just do a rapid fire. So A levels, depending on your intake, there's 1.2 years for express intakes, and standard it takes 2 years. 100% exam based. As you all might know, it's 50% of AS plus 50% of A2. The three of us have done A levels, so if you have specific questions, you can ask us. And you take 3 to 4 subjects. Pros, it's globally recognized. So usually when you go to the international qualifications and then the admission pages, the first thing that pops up will be A levels, and that is usually the gold standard for pre-U programs. It's academically rigorous, so UK, A levels is year 12 and year 13, and year 13 translates into the freshman year of college in Americas. So, meaning some colleges do accept early transfers, so you can start off your undergrad with a little bit of head start, so you can take less courses to graduate. You need to check, it varies between colleges. And then there are uncommon subjects. So if you have specific interests, like law, for example, A levels is one of the very few PU programs that offers those niche subjects that you want to explore. Cons, it's 100% exam based. So in the previous presentation, we did mention that Americas, it's usually continuously assessed. So A levels might not be for everyone. It's a relatively long PU program, and this is for the last point. It may not align with college application cycle. So you might because A levels is geared towards UK application cycles, so it might if there might be deadline clashes. So for example, when I was doing my AS exams in October, November, it coincides with the early action application cycles, and I did not know that, so I just missed the whole application cycle. So don't do that. So there's a lot of places that offer A levels, but the most premier ones are QIU and KTJ, and then the famous ones are Taylor's and Sunwing. Um, this, yeah, and then IB. So 2 years, you take 6 subjects in 6 different domains. So it includes language and literature, second language, sciences, math, social sciences, and arts. And then you also take 3 core subjects: theory of knowledge, community service, and extended essay. And then out of the 6 subjects, you pick 3 higher level subjects. So these are the ones that matter in the application, and 3 standard level subjects. So these are the ones that you can think of it as electives. Also globally recognized. It's a great fit for liberal arts and sciences because the essence of a liberal arts degree is that you can study whatever you want. So even though I study physics, I also take philosophy classes, and IB is a good taster for that. For the extended essay, you can think of it as a thesis, but at high school level. So depending on how you bring it, it can be a plus point for application. So because you can demonstrate that you have a specific interest and you did put effort in it. So this is something that, for example, yeah, cons, long course duration. There's no accelerated intake. It has to be 2 years, and it's not for people who already discovered their passion. So in Malaysia, it's usually offered in international schools, but there's also United World Colleges. So if you are not aware, it's a group of schools around the world that you can apply as a rising IB student, and then if you get it, you get to travel around. Yeah. So STPM, it's the Malaysian version of it's very similar to A level, 3 semesters. It has a corporate component, which is 3 to 4 subjects, but everyone has to take Pelajaran and work. Extremely affordable, and if you like the secondary school culture, you get to spend extra 2 years there, and you get to receive papers at low cost. So for context, if you want to receive a paper in STPM, it's 50 ringgit. Whereas if you want to, say, receive A level, for example, it's 2,000 ringgit. So say if you have a bad day during exams, if you take STPM, you have a very low risk. Cons, depending on the school, you take subject packages instead of individual subjects, so there might be limited combinations. There's only one intake, usually during June or July, and usually it's perceived as the hardest PU option. So whenever you tell your Asian uncles or aunties that you're doing SCPN, many of them think that you're committing suicide. But really, it's not as bad as what people say. It's pretty much doable. I have friends who did SCPN and they succeed in life. And it's usually offered in public secondary schools or college in Qatar. So now to the country-specific programs. So Matrix is for students who usually want to go to Malaysian public universities, but some colleges do accept Ashkelasi. There is a list in the KPM website that you can have a look at. It's 1 year program for normal Putras who take a subject package, and then you also take some core subjects. Extremely affordable. The government pays you if you do Matrix. Fast track, and is accepted by limited US colleges. Cons, again, it's a subject package, so you don't really have any options, and it's extremely competitive for non-Putras. it's offered in college matriculasi. It's usually one per state. And then OSMED and SACE, they're both Australian programs, just under different exam boards. Usually 1 year, and there's also an extended 1.5 years. You take 5 subjects, and then the weightage, there's a heavy emphasis on coursework, but the weightage differs based on the exam board. CIMP for Canadian programs, also 1 year, but you take 3 subjects per semester, so it's 6 in total, and then there's also a heavy emphasis on coursework. Very flexible subject combinations, there are no restrictions, and you get access to Australian/Canadian universities. The con is that it demands consistent effort because, like for example, 70% of coursework, so you cannot really slack on a daily basis. Whereas for A levels, you can usually cram during the last minute. Yeah. So it's usually offered in various private colleges in Malaysia. So SPM. So in very few cases, it's usually possible to jump straight from SPM to college level. So for context, SPM in American high schools is grade 11, and then American high school usually ends at grade 12. And that's why we have a pre-U, quote-unquote, pre-U program to make up the grade 12. But under exceptional circumstances, for example, if you've won an Olympiad or you did a gap year, some colleges would accept you. So I have a friend from America who did this. So pros save time and money because you skip the whole program, but you have less time to think about your interests. So for me, I personally discovered my academic interests during A levels, and if you jump straight from SPM, make sure that you know what you want to do, and very few colleges do that. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Junji. So before I get started, before I continue on with the next two options, I'd like to share a little bit about my own personal application, right? So yeah, at the time of my application, I wasn't really concerned about where to study, right? At the time, the US elections were coming up, right? And things were looking a bit uncertain. So my only concern at the time was to choose the highest ranked university. I know we all love our rankings, don't we? Right? For me to choose, just to choose the highest ranked university that I get. So for context, my grades that I used to apply, which is a 1450 SAT, A star, A star, AA predicted results for Cambridge A levels. They were enough for me to get guaranteed admissions into University of Melbourne, indicative entry to University of Sydney as a Daniel scholar, and also I got an offer from University of New South Wales that I never took up. It was only until my Princeton interview in February that I actually realized that I actually still wanted to go to the US, right? It offered me something that really just other countries couldn't really offer, which was allowing me to explore my interests during my undergraduate and really help me develop as a person. Alright, so the TLDR is there's a lot of reasons why you as a person might end up in a situation where you're not going to a US uni at the time that you were originally planning to. So what are the options you can, what are the options that you have, right? So the first one is ADTP, American Degree Transfer Program. I'm sure some of you here are familiar with it. The course duration is about 1 to 2 years, right? You get to stay in Malaysia, so it's going to be a lot cheaper. The course, the way that it's structured is you're going to spend 2 years locally, paying your local education fees and your local living expenses, and then you'll spend another 2 years after transferring. Yeah, you'll be studying 2 years at a US university, wherever you place, wherever you transfer to. Okay, yeah. Another pro about ADTP is that you can actually go out of, you can go directly out of SPM. So you don't need to take a pre-university course, and ADTP is basically starting your tertiary education early, right? So the cons are, well, depending on how you feel, maybe you prefer spending more time in the US, so ADTP might not be possible, right? And I'll get into what is alternative in a moment, right? When you study this, well, the most famous options, I'm sure, you know, Taylor's and something. So the next option is the one we really want to talk about is community college, right? So what's the difference between ADTP and community college? Well, community college, you'll be spending it your first 2 years of, you'll be spending your 2 years of your degree in the US and also afterwards another 2 years in the university that you transfer to, right? So it's a little bit more expensive than ADTP because of course you'll be paying overseas tuition fees, but it's still much cheaper than doing a direct 4-year university, doing a 4-year degree at university in the US, right? And just like ATP, you could go directly after SPM, right? The course duration of 1 to 2 years. There's a lot of programs that are involved with community college that actually helps you to transfer very easily, right? And another pro about community college is that there are transfer admission guarantees and programs that help you get in. So yeah, we will get to that in a moment. Right. So let's briefly talk about acceptance rates. Acceptance rates are not everything, but for the people who are planning out what universities to apply to, you might want to consider that certain universities apply based on they will admit you based on your major. So certain majors are very competitive. For example, at University of California, Berkeley, the acceptance rate for electrical engineering and computer science is at 4.5%, right? Maybe it's a bit difficult to see. And if you multiply that by the 60% average of international students at Berkeley, you can actually get up to around the 0.774%. Very low, it's a lot lower than even Berkeley's own acceptance rates, right? And so, yeah, there's actually resources online from public universities that actually help with transfer students specifically that you can actually see over here. The acceptance rates for ECS at Berkeley as a transfer student is actually 11%. So that's already 2 times higher than admitting as a freshman. So you can actually see that statistic reflected on University of California's own admission site, where you can see for the first year, right? Yeah, you can see for the freshman sites at Berkeley it's 11%, and for transfer students it's 35%. And the next one is San Diego, which is 36.8, followed by 54.7. So you can see it's already over 2 times higher than the admit rate for freshman students, right? So why is that? Due to government policy, public universities must accept one one in-state transfer student for every 2 freshmen, right? There's also less students who are applying. You can see 1,000, oh my god, 124,000 applicants as a first year, whereas there's only 31,000 as a transfer admit, right? And yeah, the university, because of these policies, will prioritize in-state community college transfers. All right, so just a brief overview: freshman versus community college transfer. Freshman, you get 80. You'll be spending about 80 to 100,000 a year without scholarship. And this is in USD, not Malaysian ringgit. God, I wish that were true. You know, if you could spend Malaysian fees. Right. Community college transfers, you'll be spent 2 years, 30,000 a year for 2 years, and then you'll be paying your same as the freshman for the last 2 years of your degree. As a freshman, you have closed or open curriculums. The UCs have a closed curriculum. Difficult, right? For community college, it's open curriculum with established course requirements. So yeah, there will be resources to help you plan out the courses, right? As a freshman, you'll be spending 4 years in your university. As a community college transfer, you'll be spending 3 or 4 years, which is 1 or 2 years in community college and 2 years in the university, right? As a freshman, there's no priority for international students. In fact, there's like maximum quotas that they have to hit. Like maximum quotas that they cannot exceed. Yeah, right. Whereas for community college transfer students, there's actually priority for in-state community college transfers, and there's also transfer admission guarantees. Like example, at University of California, where if you hit a certain GPA at your community college, you are guaranteed to transfer in. So we're very much like in the UK, Canada, Australia, right? And yeah, as a freshman, yeah, there is no such guarantee based on grades. Actually, even as a fun fact, even Ivy League universities accept student transfers, right? 5 out of 10 of transfers at Stanford, I think 6 years ago, were actually from community college. Now, why would you think about this? Like, well, this deal sounds a bit too good, right? Why would you prioritize transfers over your freshman students, right? I mean, they pay more money.
right? Okay, the reason for it is there's a proven academic strength, right? When you're admitting a transfer student, you know what is the academic strength against other American students. The courses that are at these community colleges are accredited by the university. So the university has agreed that this is up to a certain level, and they know that if you can do well in these courses, then you will be able to survive within the university itself, right? And the last thing is community culture and experience, right? Everyone has their own story. And this experience helped to broaden perspective for not just the students who transfer in, but the students who are already there at the university. So here's a few examples of planning courses. So this is a system of the University of California's transfer agreements. You can actually see the agreements directly between the community college and the university. In case your community college doesn't offer certain courses, because sometimes certain courses may be not recognized by the university, you can there's online resources like California Virtual Campus where you can apply for courses online, sit for community college, different community college through online. And there's also transfer admission plan, which is directly from the university itself, where they actually give you a lot of different resources. They help you sign up for events directly from the university itself to get you into the university of your dreams. So yeah, here's some extra community college resources if you're interested. To recap, is the why choose community college affordability. A fourth of the price of a year in a public university for 2 years. There's going to be less competition, less applicants, and your in-state transfers are prioritized. And flexibility, a guaranteed open curriculum, and a transfer timeline to help you get into the university of your dreams.
So aside from all of those options, there's a, yes. You can ask for these slides later for the QR code also. But yeah.
Find it on YouTube also. Later.
Yes. Yeah, working. What the Microsoft team? What the Hanif here? What the hell? Huh? No, I'm part of the tech team. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh my god, so sorry. Money ladder. All done. Wait, live stream on or not? Live stream should be on. Embarrassing. No, it's on. Okay. Yeah, I was planning to. Hey, is this yours? Is this yours? What is yours?
Welcome back, everybody. I hope you have a good lunch and maybe even met a new few friends. So we're kicking off the afternoon session that's going to answer some of the most practical and sometimes stressful questions about studying in the US. How to fund your education, how to navigate the visa process. Our speakers, Azhar Azin and Adam Rizal, will walk you through funding options, scholarships, and financial aid, as well as the ins and outs of the student's visa application, including what documents you will need, the costs involved, and how to maintain your visa status once you're there. So get your notebooks ready because this is one of those sessions you want to refer back to later. Please join me welcoming Azhar Azin and also Adam Rizal to the stage.
Hello? All right. Hi, everyone. How was the lunch? Was it tasty? Okay, I'm glad. So I know this is the topic that you guys have been waiting for, all about money. So if someone asks me why I chose this topic, is because I go where the money goes. So, okay, so let's begin. All right, so first of all, my name is Adam, but I go by Adam Rizal because everyone knows at least 10 Adams in their life, right? And I currently study at University of Oklahoma, and I will be a rising sophomore next fall. And I'm majoring in petroleum engineering.
Hi everyone, my name is Azhar. I'm currently studying chemical and biological engineering at Princeton University. I'm a rising senior, so next year will be my last year studying in the US. Good job. Technical difficulty.
Oh. It's charging? It should be charging. Oh, wait.
All right, so let's jump right into money. I know everyone here is worried about funding, about money, if you can actually afford studying in the United States. And let me be honest with you guys, I come from a middle income background, and my parents definitely couldn't afford for me to go overseas, but I would be okay studying in Malaysia. But like studying in the United States is not only for the rich, it's for everyone because the opportunity is always there. So these are the most common questions that I always get from people. The first one being is, can I afford it? And personally, I think affordability depends on your financial background. And if you have a good financial background, you might be able to afford it, but it also depends on where you want to go and how you live your life. And the second one being, how much does it actually cost? So this also depends on the university that you want to go. For example, in the United States, there are also private universities and also public universities. And of course, just like in Malaysia, the public universities are quite cheaper compared to the private ones, and the private ones are like almost like double or triple the cost as a public university. And the United States works the same way. And cost also depends on where you live, especially the city that you go, East Coast, West Coast, or Midwest, it depends. And the third question is, where can I get funding? So this is, of course, the first one being our parents. Whereas Daniel, is he here? Yeah, so call your parents if you need money. That's the first option. But I think there's actually a lot more opportunities of funding than we think there is out there, especially scholarships and many private companies would actually are willing to sponsor you if you have good results and good extracurricular to go to the United States. And the last question is, how much are the living expenses? So let's talk about this. I think everyone is not really worried about the tuition fees because that's something that's a fixed cost and it wouldn't change year by year. It's the same unless you take extra classes or whatnot. But the living expenses really depends on where you live and your lifestyle. So let me give you an example. Me personally, at the University of Oklahoma, it's a southern Midwest state, and it is one of the cheapest states to live in the United States. And I could tell you guys, I could get a single room for $500 a month, and that's really cheap because I know some of my friends that lives in California, New York, Boston, that have to pay like double or triple that same amount.
just for a smaller room and even have a roommate. So it really depends on the university that you want to go, especially for those aiming for Ivy League schools. Most of those schools are in quite expensive places for you to live. So having a great plan to use your money wisely is really good to begin with. Okay, talking about funding, let me start with the scholarships that are offered out there. First of all, there's two categories, and I'm pretty sure most of you here have finished your pre-university, right? Is there any of you here just finished your SPM? Yeah, so no hands raised. So first of all is the common one in Malaysia, which is post-SPM. So you have the government funding and also the private company funding. So these are just a few of the examples that we have, like JPA, Mara, Petronas, Khazanah, Shell, Bank, TMB, and ESN, SMW. And I can assure you that there are a lot more sponsorships out there that are willing to pay students to go study abroad, especially in the United States. And that is for the post-SPM. So you will be applying using your SPM results, and there is a lot of help out there in social media where you can find information such as like BASE initiative, if you guys heard of it, and even USAPPS sometimes help with the application, especially during the critical timelines where you could apply and it's close to the deadline. And the second scholarship being post pre-university. So I think this is a part of scholarship that is rarely spoken about because not many people think that sponsorships are there for us, especially after we have completed the post SPM, because everyone keeps talking about, okay, after SPM, I'll apply and then get a scholarship, but they never talk about the post pre-university. So actually, there are a lot of companies. A few that I know of is Petronas, Khazanah, and Bank Negara. They actually offer post pre-university scholarships to students, and I have a few friends that actually got that scholarship. It is more competitive than the post SPM scholarship, but it is an option that you could go for, especially if you're someone that needs the financial aid that could really help you pursue what you want, especially going to a country that's like on the other side of the world. So the way this works, it depends on the company. I'm not really sure about the timeline of the application because you guys finish your university at different times, right? So what I know is one of my friends, he went to a UITM Bingkil Asasi. He took that and he applied to a university and got the results. And then after that, he applied for the scholarship from Petronas, and he actually got it. So it's called Mid-Education Sponsorship, and probably you guys can look that up and find more information on that. And another friend that I have from University of Houston, he actually has already finished his first year at Houston, and then he applied with the results from his first year, and then he got it starting from his second year. So that's an option too that you guys could go for. So I'm sure like there are a bunch of opportunities out there and go for it. And I know my principle is if you apply, there might be a 1% chance of you getting it, right? And everyone is always feeling like, am I ever enough for the scholarship? That's okay, because if you apply, there's a chance of you getting it. But if you don't, there's 0% chance of you getting anything. So go for it. And a second scholarship that I find really interesting and I only figured out when I was in the United States is financial aid and school scholarships. So I know you guys are worried about, oh my God, the tuition fees are crazy. That's like what, 150,000 ringgit per year, and times four, that's like close to 1 million ringgit, and that's a lot of money, I can tell you. But the good thing about the school in the United States is they want you to be there. Once you apply and you get admitted, they want you to be there and they want you to be able to come. And they will usually offer you financial aid, like just a random scholarship in your, like if you're checking your account, you suddenly got a scholarship, and if you ask them why, they will just say, oh, because you got a good result when you applied here, so we decided to give you this. And I know a bunch of my international friends go to my school for free from the financial aid that they get from the schools. And I'm sure most of my friends here, they are well-performed students, and they definitely have that opportunity to get their sponsorship if they want to. And even if they don't, sometimes the university just give it up for free. And you know, why not free money? Everyone loves free money and free food, I guess. And then, so the other thing that I want to talk about is need blind versus need aware. So I've just found out about this too. So what is need blind school? So need blind school is a school that does not consider ability to pay. So this means that when you apply for that school, even if you give your financial background or your family income or your earnings or anything, it's not even considered in the application because that is a need blind school. And this means that your chances are equal. And usually these schools, when they don't look at the income that you have in order for you to go to the school, they will easily give you a financial aid because it's not even considered in the first place. So, and these are the examples of schools such as Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Yale, and there's many more schools that are deep line. And I'm sure Azhar has a lot to say because he's from Princeton. So, Azhar.
Yeah, so in terms of deep line, I think this is something that people really need to hear about, so take your notes. But at least at Princeton, their policy is if your household is income is less than 100K USD, then you basically go for free for international students. So if you are an international student like all of us here in Malaysia, and you do want to go to like a good school like Princeton, Harvard, MIT, all these like prestigious Ivy Leagues, they really want you there, and they don't care about whether or not you can pay or they will literally give you money to pay. So I have a couple of Malaysian friends who are there on full financial aid, which means your tuition is covered, your room is covered, your food is covered, and even flight tickets. So that means if you want to fly there, they will pay for your flights. So I think I'm very like lucky that Princeton has something like this. So I encourage if you do have good results, then you should apply for these need blind schools because they will consider you as an applicant and they don't care whether or not you can afford it. Other things that's really like, I guess, very privileged schools like Princeton has is that even for your graduation, if you request that you want flight tickets for your parents to come to your graduation, then they will pay for that too. So I think it's very, not a lot of people are aware about this. Even I applied to that school, did not know anything about this. So I feel like if you feel like you want to get like one of the best educations in the world and you can't afford it, this is like an option for you to go to Needline. But the thing is, there are only like 5 schools listed as need line for international students. So it's all the 4 that's listed up there, plus Amherst, which is in Massachusetts. So it's still it's a really good school, even though it's not like Ivy League prestigious. It's still like a really good school. So I think like you should look into this, especially if you really want to go to the US and you have good results and are a good applicant. Look into this need line schools if you have time to. Thank you.
All right, that's a really good sharing from Azam. And I actually have a one personal story, and I'll give it to you guys because I didn't get to do this in the first place. So I have one international friend. He's from Iraq, and he actually got an offer from a bunch of universities, like even prestigious ones like NYU and stuff. And I asked him, why did you go to Oklahoma? And then he said to me like, I tried everything in my life to decline their offer. So what he did was he said he couldn't afford it. He couldn't afford the flight ticket. He wouldn't have allowance money monthly. He wouldn't have any money to live there. So what he got from the university is a fully sponsored education. So his tuition fees are covered, his housing, and he even get allowance. And he also get allowance for flight tickets to go back home for the summer. And I said like, oh wow, I wish I knew that earlier because that would be a really good opportunity for me. But I'm not sure about other universities because I'm sure there is risk when you ask for a lot because they already admitted you. And the admission in the United States is quite competitive, but I think it's worth a try because why not? It's free money, like I said. Free money is always good money. So the second part I want to talk about is a need-aware school. So a need-aware school is the opposite of a need-blind school, which is they do consider your ability whether or not you can pay to go to the school. So I'm not really sure because I don't think I applied to any of these schools, but like they might ask for your financial background, which is your parents' income and your probably your parents earning yearly. And I think so what it means is they actually take into account of your affordability, whether or not you can go to this school when they want to accept you to go to that school. So what does this mean is that when the people that are accepted into the school, it would be harder for them to get a financial aid because in the first place, it is already considered for you to be able to afford to go to that school. So this means that the financial will be more limited and competitive, and sometimes the aid given is not even full, probably a partial scholarship or something. And there are a lot of universities such as Stanford, Columbia, Brown, and all the UCs, which is California, Berkeley, SB, and more. And then you got a
Michigan, Ann Arbor, and Purdue University, and there are a lot more universities that need aware compared to need blind, like Azhar just said. Okay, so I actually didn't use this tool, but I found it really helpful for those, especially going with private money, which is it's called the net price calculator. And let me give it to you a simple way to know what does a net price calculator mean. So there's a QR code, and you guys can try this out, or if it doesn't work, check out the link down below there for you to see the net price calculator. So let me give you an example. Two students want to go to Harvard University, and their parents, they have two different financial backgrounds. The first one being earning 65,000 US dollars per year, and total cost to go to Harvard is roughly $85,000 a year. And then, so because of the income that the student A has is only $65,000 per year, so the financial aid given is roughly around 78,000. So the net price that student A has to pay is only $7,000 a year, which is roughly around 35,000-ish ringgit. And I would say that is a pretty good deal for a really prestigious university, right? And the second case is student B. So student B earns double the amount compared to student A, which is roughly around 130,000 US dollars, and the total cost is basically the same. But due to the double of the income of parents of student B earning, they only get a financial aid of $40,000. So making the student B having to pay $45,000 a year, which is a lot compared to student A. So when you fill out the net calculator, it it asks you for your financial background, your assets. It asks a bit of a detail because they really want to help you to find if you can, how much do you have to actually pay to go to the schools. And I think most US universities have this link in their website themselves. Okay, so let me tell you about the student stories that I have experienced myself and my seniors and everyone else. So these are the pictures that I went to go to vacation. And it does cost a lot of money to study in the United States or to travel in the United States, not like in the UK where you can get like flights to go to Europe for 20, 30 pounds. In the US, it's roughly, I think the cheapest I've got is like 180 bucks. And that is a really good deal. But like on average, I would say like probably 200 to $300 just for a return flight to go to one state. And there's like 50 states in the US. So we have to plan our trip really well. But yeah, most of my friends, I think personally me, I work part-time as a food production worker. I would say because with our visa, we are only allowed to work 20 hours, and Azhar will explain more on that with visa and stuff. But like personally, a student story that I would tell is the allowance that I get from my sponsorship is enough, and I could save money, but at the same time, I'm in the United States, and I don't know if this is the first and last time I would be here, and I don't know if I will be able to afford that next time. So I'm like, you know what? Let me take this chance to go travel and explore the United States. Like you said, many of my friends here have traveled all across the U.S. and they found it really beautiful. And every state is like a different country, and I can tell you that it's a really nice place. And so that's why I decided to work part-time. So the money that I get from working goes to my vacations. So it's like a self-reward, and it's a win-win because I don't use my scholarship money in order to travel, but I actually use the money that I work hard for just to get to go to a vacation. And other stories that me personally I got is many of my local friends in the United States, they do investment, but I don't do this because it's not Sharia compliant because I'm a Muslim. But if you guys are okay with that, then go for it. A lot of them like do investment with their money that they get, and I wouldn't want to say this, but like some of them do sports betting, and I don't recommend that because a lot of my friends lost a lot of money in that, and it is something like if you put in let's say 200 bucks, you could get like what $1,000 back, but like the chances are like really, really low. So it's a high risk, low reward thing. And a lot of my friends lost their tuition fee monies just because of that. And it is really bad. And another option that I got was from the bank. So I opened an account with Chase, JP Morgan Chase Bank. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that name. So when they knew that every 6 months I was getting a lump sum of money, which is quite a lot for a student. So they offered me a chance to open a savings account. So I have two accounts at once. One is called a checking account, where account that I use every single day, just like a normal Maybank account, CIMB account, and then a savings account where I can put my money in, and it helps you track your money because it gives you like sometimes you could deduct your money from your checking account monthly in order for you to save more money each month consistently instead of like having to transfer it yourself. They do it for you. And at the same time, they did offer me investment opportunities. They said like, okay, if you reach a certain amount of money, let's say $30,000 USD per year, let us know so we could invest that money and you could get back like probably 1 or 2%. And I would say, why not? It's still free money, you know? And honestly, for me in Malaysia, in order for me to save money is convert the money to Malaysia because like the ratio is like 1 to 4 or 5-ish. So especially for those, if you go there with sponsor, it is a lot of money if you transfer it into Malaysian ringgit. It's even more than many of people's salary in here in Malaysia. So I would say that is my own personal story in studying in the United States and how I manage my money. But sometimes I do still fell short with my money. But you know, Daniel's solution is always the best. But don't do it too much because you have to be independent when you're in the United States, and having your own money, having your own responsibility to handle money comes with a great cost, and it's a consequence that you have to deal with yourself. And yeah, I think, oh no, one last thing, the most important thing I think is lifestyle. I haven't touched this part is lifestyle, and I think lifestyle is really important because I have a bunch of friends that have the same allowance as me, but they keep complaining about I don't have enough money, I don't have enough this, that, yada yada, and all of that. And I'm like, wait, how? At first, I thought it was like probably it's because they live in a much expensive state, and that's fair because some of us get the same allowance but like different living costs, right? But at the same time, I know some of my friends that live probably in a cheaper state or a cheaper place where they can cook, they can find ways to save their own money, to easily get part-time, but they keep complaining they don't have enough money. And looking back, it's about their lifestyle, about what they choose to buy, how they choose to spend their money. And if you eat out every day, of course, that's going to be like, what, $15, $20 a meal, and not including tips. And yeah, I'm sure my friends will touch on tips later on. So good luck with that. I didn't like tips, but it's the culture. So yeah, I think I'll pass it to Azhar.
Yeah, I think just for me to speak on my student experiences, I'm also working a part-time job. So I work as a tutor, teaching physics and chemistry to like first and second year students. And I get like $20 an hour, which is a lot if you convert it to to Malaysian ringgit. That's around what 80 ringgit per hour, just for me to teach someone math, someone to teach someone physics. So yeah, it's really important for you to be able to manage your money. And as a scholar, I do have like that privilege of getting a monthly allowance. But like Adam, I also opened a high yield savings account. So that's me just putting in like my lump sum money into account and just let it get that passive income of like maybe 5% every year. So if I put in like what $1,000, then at the end of the year I'll get like $50 just from not doing anything and just leaving it there. So I think if you do end up going to the States, look into opening a high yield savings account. There are other things like fixed deposit accounts where you can just put your money, it sits, you can't take it out, and then you can get money back. That's like options that if you want to explore that. Now, thank you, Adam, for talking about money. We're going to talk about visas, not this type of visa, but this US visa. So this is what a typical F1 visa looks like. This is mine. I blocked out anything that you guys can use to impersonate me. But this is a picture of it. It's kind of nice. It's on your passport. So let's have an example where you have a passport with your visa, but still you expire. Your passport expires. So you'd have to carry like two different passports. So one of it with your visa, it just stays on your passport forever if you want to keep it. So yeah, I think the more important part is talking about this is as an international student, where everyone here is under an F1 visa. So this in the US there are different types of visas, but the one for international students is F1. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about maintaining that status. So as a F1 visa holder, you have to work, you have to be in school full time. That means that you have to be studying 12 credit hours per semester. If you don't know what a credit hour is, it's basically the amount of time you spend in a week studying or like in classes. So that's like 12 hours per week in classes, which is not a lot, but it's what's necessary to maintain this status. And if you're not sure, your university might have like different options or like different categorizations, but they know themselves what it means to be a full-time student. So this is like the first criteria. The second is working on campus jobs. So unlike the UK, where you can work anywhere, in the US, as an international student, you can only work on campus. So like Adam working on campus, me also working on campus as like a part-time tutor. What's really like strict about it, especially with the new political climate, is that working off campus is illegal. It's not like you can't get your visa revoked. So I know people who work in like boba shops in Chinatown and they're international students. So that's illegal and they have that risk. So if you want to maintain your visa status and you want to play it safe, it's better that you be a goody two shoes and just work on campus because that's like the safest option for you. Finally, is you can't do any minor offenses or criminal charges. So what does that mean is that you have to follow the federal law because as an international student, even though your state has like different laws regarding different things, you're an international student visiting the federal territory or like the federal or like the US as a whole, so you have to follow federal laws. That's very dangerous and sometimes you can feel like a bit scared, but as long as you're a good person, then you'll be fine. So an example is there's this one time I went out with someone and we went to like a party and they were not 21 and I didn't realize this. But yeah, they got stopped at the bouncer area and because if they're not 21, that's illegal for you to go to like a bar or to go to somewhere that has alcohol, for example. And if there was like, if it was the police or anything like that, he could have gotten in trouble, he could have gone to jail, he could have gotten his visa revoked. So I know some people might take these things very lightly, but it's one of those things where you can't be too safe because if you do something bad and you get caught, then there's a chance of your visa getting revoked, and there's like it's hard for you to reapply again to go to the States because now you have this offense on your catalog law. So I think it's better to just play it safe. If you want to do the US, go have fun, but remember to just like follow the laws, which is not hard. I'm sure everyone here is a good person. You guys are following the laws, so don't be like too worried. So yeah, now let's talk about the important documents. So I'm pretty sure everyone here is still like haven't gotten to the US university. You're still like thinking of applying. So these are the two important documents when you're applying. So number one is the SEVIS. So think about this as like a database. So as long as you get accepted to a university, you can apply for, you can put your name in the SEVIS database. So it stands for Student and Exchange Visitor Information System. Sorry. So yeah, it's just like a database to show that you're an international student and your documents and all is there. So that costs 350 USD. So that's already like quite a lot of money. But with that also, you still have to do the visa application form, which is the DS-160. I know these are like different names and different words, but just say it's a visa application form, and that's $185. So with the service fee, it's just saying that, I am an international student, but then you have to still apply for the visa. So that's two different documents that you need to do after getting accepted to a US university. This is the typical timeline. So usually your results of getting into US university comes out in April or May, and then your international office would send you something called an I-20. So this is like documentation to show that, hey, I am now a student of this university. I can apply for a visa because I'm international. So that's the I-20, which you'll typically receive around April to May, and then that's when you go to the next step from May to June, where you have to pay your service and complete your visa application. So that's May to June. So you can only do that after getting your I-20. So this is like very like chronological. You can't like skip a step forward. You have to follow this like procedure. And after paying the fees and doing the application form, that's when you book and attend an interview. So they have like this website that is so old, like it actually looks like it's from the 90s, like it's a very old type of website, but it's where you have to basically apply for your, or book and attend an interview. So you would do this in late July to like August usually, And yeah, the visa interview, I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But just know that it can be a very like stressful process trying to get that slot out, that appointment slot. And finally, you get your visa typically issued at the end of July or in the starting of August. It takes about 2 weeks after you do your interview to get your visa approved. Adam, you said you wanted to say something about this.
Okay. Actually, I have a funny story. I mean, it's funny now, but it was scary when I went through that. So when I paid for the service fee and the DS 160, from the bank, my payment did went through, but in the website, like as I said, it's like a website from the 90s, and it's been really long since it's been updated. So the payment didn't went through from the website because it says that my payment is unavailable, and I got panicked for a second because my friends never had this issue like how I did. But what happened was when I put in the receipt number, it says that there's no valid receipt number for this payment. So basically, they didn't get my payment. And I double checked, triple checked everything was right. But like I panicked and I called the embassy. But it was actually, I think it was Labor Day, I can't remember or something. So I had to wait and I panicked because it takes 2 weeks for the visa to finish. And I had to go for the interview first, and it takes like what a week and a half from the day that you paid and booked, and then like 2 weeks before you get it. And I was flying out in like what 3, 4 weeks at most, so it was a really scary moment for me. But like I can assure you that if you give the embassy a call and you have any issues regarding the website, those people really want to help you and they are really helpful because there are Malaysians too, and they love Malaysian people even if they are from the United States. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Adam. Sorry we're having technical difficulties right now. All right, yeah, so now this is the DS 160. So again, sorry, this is the DS 160. All right, again, this is the DS 160. So just a reminder, I know the name is like very scary, DS 160, what is that? But it's the visa application form. And these are the typical questions that they ask. So obviously you're gonna ask like about your personal information. So that means like what's your name, your date of birth, your passport. So very like typical application form stuff. The second one, which some people might be like,
when I connect this to the
do
laptop,
I
doesn't
have
work.
any concern about this? Is the security background. So this is just to see whether or not you are like a terrorist or you have any diseases that could be very transmissible in the US. So it's not too serious. Usually people just click no for everything because nobody here is like a terrorist or a very like serious like violation law. So you don't worry too much about it, even though it's considered like a security background question. And I don't know if you saw it just now, but the last one was your social media handles. So I know recently there's a lot of news about people like saying, do I have to unprivate my accounts when I'm applying for a visa in the US? The answer to that is no, you don't have to do that. But in the visa application form itself, you do have to give your Instagram handles, your Twitter handle, your Facebook handle, and what's the worst they're going to see? Videos of you liking cat pictures, right? It's not going to be too bad, but I would advise that if you have anything controversial and you're going into a visa interview, it's better to archive those posts up. But this is just like the three typical like main groups of questions they ask in the visa application form. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the next I would want to touch on is the visa interview documents. So the required documents, I guess, is pretty straightforward when it comes to the passport. So that's like your pass to travel around the world. I-20 is the one issued by your university. So that's the university confirming that you're a student there. DS-160 again, application form. There's like a confirmation page where you have to show the service receipt. So like Adam was saying that he had problems with the receipt payment. He had the problem because that is a requirement for you to bring to the visa interview. The next one is like the visa appointment confirmation, and finally is the passport size photo. So this one you don't worry photo or like picture shop and then say I want a visa picture, and then they know which type of, just say you're doing a US visa picture and they have like the format and the size for that. What's recommended is an admission letter, your university admission letter. So even though you have your I-20 to confirm that you're going to that university, you still have to show like it's good to have the admission letter from the university itself. Academic transcripts just to show that you're a good student, SPM, IGCSE, A-levels, just have it just in case. Standardized test scores, previously mentioned was like the SAT, your TOEFL, your IELTS, anything that like shows that you're a capable person to come to the US. And the next one actually is quite important, is the proof of financial support. So if you're if you're under a scholarship, it's a bit easy because these scholarship bodies are very like used to having students applying to the US or to the UK. So this would typically just be a form from like your scholarship advisor or supervisor saying, hey, this student is going to be sponsored by us. You don't have to worry about him running away to the US. We will have him there. Or if you're not under a scholarship, you can have your bank statements. So typically your parents can show their bank statements and say that, hey, this visa issued, we can confirm that he can pay for all 4 years of education in the US. So these are like important documents to have. And the last one is the proof of ties to Malaysia. So some people usually have like, show that, oh, my parents own a property here, or if you're a scholarship, you're like, I have a bond. So when you're talking to the interviewer, it's really like saying that I swear I'm not going to stay there for long. I'm just there to get my education. I'm not going to do anything mischievous. It's not too stressful as people make it out to be. But having these recommended documents help you explain your story better and tell them that I'm a Malaysian citizen and I would love to come back to Malaysia. I don't care if that's not your real purpose. If you want to stay in the US, go ahead. But when it comes to the actual interview, you have to say that I want to come back to Malaysia because that makes it easier for them to issue a visa document. All right. Now I'm going to touch a bit about different types of opportunities that you get to go in terms of CPT and OPT. So these are two different things when it comes to working status. So a CPT stands for curricular practical training. So this typically happens when you're still studying in the US. So let's say you want to do an internship there, or you want to do like a co-op and work at a company there while you're studying, then you would use something called the CPT. So what's the requirements is that you need a job offer, so you can't go in willy-nilly just apply for a CPT without having a job offer from a US company. And it usually takes like 1 or 2 weeks to get it issued from your university. And yes, it has to be paid work. When it comes to the CPT itself, there is like a I guess, maximum amount of time that you can be under CPT. So you can only be CPT for maximum of 12 months, because after you finish your CPT, you can't do your OPT. So what an OPT is called optional practical training. So this is for after graduation. Let's say you want to work in the US, gain some experiences there, then you can apply for something called OPT. So it has to be related to your industry. So for me, example, studying chemical engineering, then I have to apply for jobs related to chemical engineering or like in that field of area. I can't go outside of it. It's very hard to still, it's harder for you to get an OPT if you're not applying for something that's in your field of study. And for an OPT, for any major, it's actually 1 year long. So let's say you study finance, so you can work in the US, you're allowed to work in the US for 1 year long after that. But if you're a STEM major, so if you're doing science, technology, engineering, or math, and even economics, you can actually request for a STEM extension. So this is 24 months added to that initial 1 year of OPT. So that means that if you're studying STEM, you can typically stay in the US after graduation for 3 years. And yeah, you want to use it to work and gain experiences. So it really depends on like what you want to do with your like studies or what you want to do with your life. If you want to stay in the US, get some really good money, then go ahead. It's for 3 years if you're studying STEM. So you would have to apply for the OPT. And after OPT, there are other like pathways to get visas to continue staying in the US if you're interested in that. So one of it is a H-1B visa. So you probably, if you read up on US news, you hear a lot about, oh, these H-1B visas, it's people like taking jobs away from Americans, which is not necessarily true. There's only 85,000 spots given per year for a H-1B visa, and typically 20,000 of those have to be people who graduated with a US master's degree. So that leaves us with 65,000 H-1B visas yearly, and it's very competitive because you're competing with every international applicant out there. So it's a very like low percentage. So you saw previously acceptance rates for universities are maybe 5%. An H-1B visa is even lower than that because you have millions of people applying for like 60,000 spots. So it becomes very competitive. What's kind of like unfair to our neighbors in Singapore is that the Singapore government and the Chile government actually has special like processes with the US where they actually get allocated slots. So there's like 5,400, I think, slots that the Singaporeans have for H-1B visas allocated towards Singaporeans themselves. So when it comes to the Singaporeans, they only have to fight against other Singaporeans. So that's like something you want to take note of if you're thinking about studying in the US. The next type of visa post-graduation is called the O1 visa. So this is very similar to like the UK high potential visa. It's that you have to be like the best out of the best, the cream of the cream of your industry. So for example, if you start an AI startup in the US, then you can apply for the O1 visa and they'll most likely like hire you.
Wish to go to visit Hollywood yourself one day, it could be a good choice. The South, there is Houston, Texas. Even though I guess the stereotype is like you see a lot of cowboys there and stuff, but they have truly major and urban cities in Texas as well, such as Houston. And going to the Midwest, there's Chicago. Chicago is known for its beautiful lakes and I guess really cold winters as well. So each of this location will have different seasons and weather as well. If that's one thing that you would like to look at. And finally, there's the East Coast, and one of the more prominent cities that you can find in the East Coast is New York City. I guess it's home to Columbia University, New York, NYU, and so many more. And along the East Coast, there are other places, New Jersey, where Princeton is at. The Ivy Leagues are usually located on the East Coast, so Boston, there's Harvard, and so on. So yeah, this is about the location in general in the U.S. So going slightly more specific down the university, we can also see what kind of environment different universities have. So there is an urban environment, rural environment, or maybe even suburban environment. So for example, Cornell is a really, really beautiful place if you're someone who loves nature. It's really worth it to visit, especially if it's during the autumn. They have really beautiful fall foliage and all. I haven't personally been there, but people who go to Cornell will probably watch that for me. So that's an example of like the rural location in the campus. It's also suitable for you to study if things like it makes you focus in this kind of environment and so on. And the one down there is USC, University of South California. So this university is in an urban environment. It's in LA, but it does really have its own space. You can see, like for example, in this photo, you can see like they have very similarly themed buildings. So even though you are in an urban area, you really get the sense that you are in a university with a lot of students because USC is also a public university. So I guess it will be about 100,000 students total in that university. It really gives you a campus or like a university feel if that's what you're looking for. And lastly, if you want to talk about real urban and like you want to absorb the most out of New York City, I would say like, yeah, NYU is like a really great example of an urban campus. It really is just integrated perfectly into New York City. So if, let's say you want to look for opportunities, you want to explore NYC itself. So NYU can really give you a good sense of that. And yeah, being an urban university, they have a different environment compared to the previous two. So these are all the examples that we can look into when we think about our fits. Okay, so without dragging it further, I would go into academic fit. I think this is where we would usually do the most research in before we think of what schools is the best for us to apply to. So I broke it down to a few ways. One of it is the school culture and the curriculum of each school. So there are liberal arts education. Usually the schools in the Ivy League, they are known to have liberal arts curriculum. For example, I go to Columbia, so there's this curriculum called the core curriculum. Even though I'm doing math and science, I still have to do, along with all the other students there, we have to do basically literature and also many different writing subjects, which can be a drag sometimes, but it opens up our eyes to the different aspects of education and things, many sort of things. But also, there's also research-centric schools. For example, if you look at MIT or any other type of Institute of Technology, Caltech, Georgia Tech, they are known for its rigor in especially engineering and research. And then there are also a co-op school where I think it's like a mix of undergrad and also masters together. Oh, and also working experience together. Some schools do offer that, so that's one thing you can look into. And how do we know or find out the school culture and its curriculum if you're not there? Well, we have many online sources. It's not the best, but it's the best that we can do from Malaysia. We can really utilize virtual tools like visit the university websites, and even maybe YouTube. YouTube helps so much. So because sometimes you research about different universities, you can see students doing student vlogs, and you can basically see what they're up to in the daily lives in the university. And maybe you can picture yourself. If you're a student there, what would you do over there? So, for example, on the right, you can see there are videos about curriculum. For the top one is Columbia. They talk about the core curriculum. And the one in the middle is basically the website to register courses in UCLA. So we might not be a student in UCLA, but all of us can access its website to see what kind of courses they offer, what kind of classes are there. There are so many fun classes. I have friends at UCLA. I guess they register themselves into like rocket building classes if that's what you're interested in. And also at the bottom is like a virtual tour. You can get it from the Princeton website, you can get it from YouTube itself to really see how it's like. And the bottom one there is Princeton. It's a really beautiful campus if environment is one important thing for you. So really utilize this kind of online sources. So the second part is researching about super courses aligned with your passion. So I guess all the universities, or most of the universities in US, they offer a diverse range of courses, and it really isn't a problem to choose the courses that you want to study in any of the US schools. But there are schools that specialize in different fields, or they are known for different popular courses. For example, I would say, just pointing out an example, like econs, Northwestern is pretty famous for econs itself, and also computer science, universities such as CMU, Carnegie Mellon, they are very well known for their computer science course, and it's really competitive out there. So these are kind of the aspects that you can look into, and also maybe even any prominent or like famous professors that you would really want to meet. Maybe it's like a professor you have seen in YouTube, if you have followed him for a long time. So for me, I don't know if you know this physics professor, but his name is Brian Green. So he's a professor at Columbia, and it was an experience for me to personally be his student when I followed him for such a long time since I was in secondary school. So yeah, and finally, when we go to class sizes, well, the schools in the Ivy League, they have a smaller student size, even though it's not that small. Usually it can be up to 20 to 30,000 overall, but undergraduate school size can range up to like 6 to 10,000 overall. And also public institutions, for example, the UCs and also the state schools, where they can have much larger size of students, but also because of that, they have much more lively spirit, or when it comes to sports, like they have experience when it comes to, I guess, American football as well. So this is just an examples, not in order, I like to emphasize, about the popular courses offered by different universities. So I didn't really focus on putting the names here because I believe that there are so many other schools who are popular for different courses, but regardless, I just want to point out like some examples. So when we talk about engineering or maybe CS, you can see like the so when we talk about engineering or maybe CS, you can see like the common few logos or schools that we all know, like MIT, even UIUC, Stanford, Berkeley, Caltech. When it comes to economics, there is UPenn, NYU, Columbia, Chicago, and Northwestern. And when it comes to natural sciences, the five would be maybe Princeton, UMich, Harvard, UCLA, UCSD, and Yale. But what I want to say is that even though we can categorize famous schools according to different courses, each of these schools, they offer so many different courses. For example, Princeton definitely have engineering and CS as well, and they are also really well known. So like, I would say don't constrain yourself when you're choosing different schools because all of them do offer different courses and the schools and what you can get out of each school is a really different experience. So moving on, just to emphasize again, public and private, just to get this on the slides, it could be useful for every one of you, if especially when it comes from a financial perspective, because public schools tend to have lower tuition costs than private universities. So these are the few factors that I guess it's funded by the state government, that's why it's cheaper. But examples would be Penn State, Purdue, Michigan, and also the UCs there. And private, probably it goes into the Ivy League, Emory, Vanderbilt, for each private and public. But make no mistake, you can never really go wrong as long as you think it's the right fit.
Would be international students if you were to study overseas in the US. So let's welcome Tamini and Luis to walk us through the recent political developments, how they affect visa, campus life, and free speech, and what you can expect when engaging in political discussions while abroad. Please join me in welcoming Tamini and Luis to the stage. Also, just a note, for the Slido link, you guys can always ask questions and you will be addressed throughout. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Luis.
And I'm Tamini.
And today we'll be talking about, yeah, exactly what Plana said earlier, which is to take a step back and kind of like look at the bigger picture and look at recent political developments and uncertainty in the US. This is a new talk that we introduced in this year's USAPPS because we think that it's absolutely prevalent and relevant for us to talk about this right now, especially with all the ongoing developments. In previous years of USAPPS, we see a lot of the audience members come from scholarship bodies, and we can see that how in this year's USAPPS, it has definitely impacted the number of people who come to the event itself because scholarship bodies like the government scholarships, Petronas included, have taken a step back in sending their kids to the United States due to these developments in the political climate. So we'll be giving you guys a bit of an introduction on how that impacts student life and also in the nitty-gritty processes of applying for your visa.
Yeah. Before we begin, I think we just want to take, like, if there are any particular questions or concerns that you have, if you're thinking about going to the US, we want to address them throughout the session. So if anybody just has, are there any particular concerns that you have, whether it's like safety, you're worried about campus protests, you can just shout it out. It's quite a small group, so we can hear you if you have anything in particular. Yes. Okay, yeah. Whether or not you can get a visa. Any other concerns before we proceed with the presentation? Going once, going twice? Okay, so I think we'll continue with the presentation, and if there are any concerns throughout, feel free to let us know.
Right, yeah, so very brief introduction. I'm Muiz. I am a rising senior, fourth year at UC Berkeley. I study economics and data science.
I'm Kamini, a rising sophomore at Harvard University, and so there's been a lot of news and lawsuits in the recent months.
Okay, so very basic table of contents. We're going to talk. So very basic table of contents. We're going to talk over misconceptions, or issues. We're going to charter or issues. We're going to charter this presentation in issue based. So we're going to look at our international students still allowed to study in the US. Can people still apply for their visas? Exactly answering your question, Isabel. And then is it still very unsafe there? What protections do students have in the US? And then we're going to go over why it is still worth it to apply to the US despite these ongoing developments.
Yeah, so I think to start us off, I'm sure that this is not a secret. In fact, I think a lot of you would probably read some of these headlines in the last few months. Most recently, Harvard versus Trump. They have an ongoing litigation in the Massachusetts court. But even with recent revocations of visas that was being handled, as well as students being having worried about them facing deportation, especially in the wake of a lot of pro-Palestine protests on campuses. I think notably Columbia and UCLA, where there were very big protests, there was a lot of coverage of this in the recent years. So I think what we want to underscore is that there is a very serious political situation in the United States that is challenging the freedom of academic institutions. And I think things on the surface, they do seem very, very bad, and there are very serious issues. But I think what we want to underscore is that, as a day-to-day student, life still continues. It is still possible for us to be, I still feel very safe on campus. It's very much possible for student life to continue as these battles go on. And I think we want to share a bit more about what the reality is like as a student, in these universities as this happens.
I think you got this one on the. So moving on, like why are we talking about this in the first place, right? I think it's important for us to take a deep dive on how all this, Trump being elected into office actually impacts student life. So the first reason is how the current administration is very deliberate in their approach towards immigration. They have put it at the center of their administration in terms of policy, and they really want to tackle the issue of illegal immigrants pouring into the United States. And they believe that one issue, these American universities, we are taking away opportunities from Americans who live in the United States. So they are taking away opportunities from Americans who live in the United States. So they see international students working in the U.S. Not being students working in the U.S. Not being regulated well as an issue. So because of this, there's also the issue of Gaza and also the issues in Palestine, where the ongoing genocide has been increasingly protested by students, especially in liberal universities. Around these campuses are students who are educated and students who are very aware about issues that happen around the world, and they have a say. They want to have a say in all these issues. So when it comes to the current administration's stance on the issue, they come into conflict with what students have to say about it, because as we know, the US has a lot of interests in the Middle East, and they are very well connected with the state of Israel, and whatever students say against the state of Israel is something that is of concern to the current administration. Yeah. Continuing. Misconceptions. First question. I think it's important for us to go through directly to the spotlight, because instead of us going around the bush, we answer questions that I feel are questions that I got when I came back after all these things happened in the US in regards to Harvard, in regards to all the other university students having their visas revoked. So our international students are still allowed to study in the US. So yes, they are. I mean, no, they aren't not allowed. Sorry, that was really confusing. My bad. International students aren't allowed to study in the US. False. So they're still allowed to study in the US, and they still see a lot of value. So they're still allowed to study in the US, and they still see a lot of value. Companies still see a lot of value in international students coming to the US, because they realize how talented the students are. And there are strong advocates, especially from university campuses, for international students to be present, because it creates a lot of value for the campus community, right? It's important to get global perspectives into the classroom. But at the same time, international students, whether we like it or not, are paying for the bulk of admissions fees, right? In reality, if I come from UC Berkeley, for example, a state school, someone who comes from the state of California will probably pay $9,000 per semester to attend that university. But I, as an international student, pay $40,000 US to attend that university. So we are essentially carrying 4 other students' punya fees when it comes relative to what they pay, for example. So it is still very relevant for them to retain a certain amount of international students, and they can't just kind of like throw us out of the bus, International students can't apply for visas, or is it very difficult to apply for visas? So, do you want to say something about it?
Sure. So in reality, the application process for visas is back to normal. For a very brief period, there was a bar on visa applicants, but this was specifically restricted to international students who had Harvard offers and were applying to Harvard. You can click to the next 2 bubbles, yes. So
So on June 4th, the federal government issued a proclamation suspending the entry into the United States of any new Harvard students who had a F visa, which is what a lot of researchers at Harvard are on. There was a June 20th and June 23rd court order which lifted this restriction and allowed Harvard to continue enrolling international students while the cases move forward. So basically what happened was when the executive order was signed, the order was interpreted differently by several embassies. So I have many international friends who had to reapply for their visa. There were some people who was reported at that juncture in between June 4th and June 20th. There were certain embassies who interpreted the executive order and followed through and not grant any new visa appointments. There were others who did not, interpret the visa of the executive appointments. There were others who did not, interpret the visa of the executive order the same way. And so there were a few different cases that you might have come across reading. And so there were a few different cases that you might have come across reading about students and their visas. But on the whole, this has been resolved now, and most students have been able to apply for their visas.
So you might wonder, like, well, why is this relevant to me? If I'm not applying to Harvard, like, am I going to be impacted by this? Harvard is just the starting point, for my belief, for Trump in Trump's plans to tackle this liberal institution, aka the universities. I think understanding his personality for the past few years as president of the United States and someone who's been campaigning to be president for a very long time, he's someone who's very media savvy, and from my understanding, he tackles Harvard as an institution because he believes that if I can tackle the biggest brother, then he indicates to all the other universities that I'm coming for you next. So Harvard is only the beginning of this, and it is not impossible for this kind of like chain reaction to be piled over to other universities as well. Right. So is it dangerous to be an international student in the US? I think we had some questions about gun safety, and I think that is a very, very prominent, relevant question that we get in USAPPS every year. But in reality is that there will always be risks in being in the United States, and these risks have definitely increased in comparison to prior years, especially in relation to your status as an international student. But as long as you understand the do's and don'ts of an international student, you comply to federal laws, as what Azhar mentioned in this session, and you understand your rights, the support services available, you'll be able to navigate this well and have a fulfilling and rewarding 4-year experience or 2-year experience, depending on how long you stay there. Right. Is my student visa at risk? So I'd like to bring this to a story. So on the 5th of April 2025, the Trump administration terminated visas for 23 members of my university, and they were mostly international students. I believe in the span of all the UC campuses, meaning UCLA, UC Berkeley, Davis, Merced, and all the other 9 universities, there was about 300 people who were affected by this termination of visas. And a lot of people believe that there was no fundamental basis to how they were being terminated, and students got angry and universities got angry. On the 15th of April 2025, international students fought with this visa terminations, alleging that there was no fundamental basis to this. The biometric tracking, for example, is not a method of them, is not a basis in which they can terminate my visa. And they brought Trump's administration to court, and the university supported these students by sending them to legal clinics. But on the 25th of April, we can see how inconsistent the Trump administration is, because on the 24th of April, most of them got their visas back and it was restored by ICE. So ICE is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Organization in the US, who basically does their job in ensuring that illegal immigrants are not, flaunting around in the US. So there is some levels of inconsistency, and there are, what I want to convey here is, I believe that there are limits to his executive power. He can't just do whatever he wants to. There are limits to his executive power, and there are resources in which you can access in order to protect yourself from this targeting. Yeah. So what kind of protections do we have for students? I believe there are 3 main boxes to this. Firstly is US immigration law, right? There is a right for you to appeal, and there's also a right to notice. So right to appeal basically means that when your visa is terminated, for example, in the worst case scenario, there is a right for you to appeal for that process to be reviewed. Like, why did I get was there a justification behind this? A right to notice is also the fact that you have a right to know why your visa was terminated in the first place, and there has to be a fundamental basis to it. Your university is also a form of protection. You have your uni's international office, so for me it's the Berkeley International Office, and they have a lot of free legal services that are available, immigration law experts that they can provide to you if you are in trouble. And finally, there is also the Malaysian Embassy, which has offices in number one, DC, New York, LA.
And there's a consulate at LA.
Yeah, there's also consulate in LA. And these are people who are there to support you, to represent you, and to provide additional communication to the US authorities if you don't have a legal guardian present in the United States.
I think there's one thing to add. It's with the consulate of like the Malaysian Embassy in DC. If you are a student in the US and once you come to the US, you can actually register with the embassy on their website so that they have in their information, they have a system, so they'll keep track, they know that we have students in this particular area. In general, when the embassy has heard cases, even just beyond, with the visa revocation, but even natural disasters in certain areas, they do also want to reach out to students to make sure you're okay. So that's also another person who will be there rooting for you and fully there to support you in the case of anything happening that puts your safety at risk. Yeah. So I also wanted to talk a little bit more about protests, media literacy, to share a little bit more about what kinds of protests are happening on campuses. I think obviously the most covered protests that have been happening so far are pro-Palestine protests, and often on certain campuses there are also protests, and often there are counter-protests. So if there's a pro-Palestine protest, what does happen sometimes is there's another group of protesters who are trying to counter that protest that is actually happening. And also most recently, there was a lot of organization of No Kings protest, which has been students and the general population who are trying to protest certain policies